picture yourself having a normal workday. The next morning, civilization is gone, and the only people left are you and the most stunning superior at your job, forced to survive together in a brutal winter across an empty world. It opens with a handful of people working in an office. On the phone, a man confirms the requests have been logged and promises to resolve the issue within 3 days. As Howard's shift at Grand Glory comes to a close, he feels his entire life is centered on work. His boss approaches, warning him to step up as layoffs loom. Mr. Wang hands him a list of potential clients to call and introduce himself to the next day. Howard types quickly, lost in his work. Suddenly, the monitor glitches. He recoils from the screen, startled, and its reflected glow sparks in his eye. A colleague turns around and asks what's happening. With his head down, he puts a hand on his forehead. Howard says he's fine, but his vision has gone blurry, and a colleague suggests he get some rest. He then reminds him of the dinner with Mr. Wang, and Howard asks if there really is another one. While scrolling on his phone, he notices his bank balance is low. His colleague sees him pause and asks if he doesn't want to go. Donald offers to lend Howard a loan, but Howard turns it down, saying he just hates socializing. Donald insists there's no alternative, since the new director will be there and everyone must attend. As a woman approaches, he quietly warns Howard of her arrival. Miss Luo walks through the office, catching everyone's attention. Howard spots Sabrina Luo and notes that women like her are out of his league. As night falls, the scene moves to the glowing front of a hotel. During dinner, 2 glasses clink in a toast, and everyone gathers around a lavish table, enjoying the lively meal. Suddenly, Howard's expression changes. A diagram. He discovers that his iris, optic nerves, cortex, and central nervous system are suddenly interlinked, and in confusion, he watches his surroundings while the man beside him drinks calmly. A strange image materializes before him. The figure claims that the star-filled universe has designed all sensory organs, even the mind, to enable silent communication. Howard asks what they want from him. Yet the figure replies that he is the ideal candidate for their dream tests, and the entity extends an invitation to him. Be the Dreamland's tester, promising countless different life experiences, asking only to begin. Howard says to be left alone, explaining he needs to work the next day and has no time for this. Craziness. The voice says the system can create duplicates of anyone from the real world. In the Dreamland, he could decide their fate. Soon, Miss Luo and Mr. Weing appeared at the door. She observes that he looks dissatisfied with what he currently has. Mr. Weing formally introduces the new director, Miss Luo, who is already a familiar face at the company. He then points to a colleague, a team leader in advertising, and she greets him with a smile. Howard watches his colleague butter up the boss, lauding the latest project and attributing all of its success to the boss's brilliant decisions. Still in the flow of compliments, the man shakes Mr. Weing's hand, who then readies to introduce Mr. Gao, the copywriter. A hand materializes, offering a warm handshake. When Miss Luo turns, she asks who Howard is. He stands up to introduce himself to the new director, but Mr. Weing cuts him off, calling him a nobody. Howard stays silent in the face of the humiliation. In one memory, his teammates cheer as he clinches a tough client, while his boss's voice calls him a mediocre talent. In another, he pitches an audacious proposal to Mr. Weing, who questions his ability and tells him to just do his job. Back in the present, the boss ends the evening by telling them not to waste time on him and wishing everyone a good night. Donald watches everything in silence. Outside the hotel, the colleagues say goodbye and agree to see each other at work tomorrow. Colleagues bid farewell and plan to see one another at work the next day. As Howard reflects, he realizes that despite his hopes for recognition of his hard work, nothing went as he imagined. Donald leans in, pats his shoulder, and urges him to pick a side, suggesting that flattering the boss could prove advantageous. A recollection from his college years, shows a friend standing up against injustice and resisting the urge to bow to power. Howard remarks that Donald is completely different from the man he was back then. Meanwhile, Mr. Weing tells Miss Luo that she needn't waste time on lower-level employees, and she calmly replies that she knows exactly what she's doing. Weing says her gestures send mixed signals, causing some to believe they can take on more than they're capable of. He concludes that anyone who doesn't understand their role and duty will end up getting fired. After a pause, Howard resolves to ponder quitting tomorrow, yet he first needs to vent his anger. The system throws an error alert, noting it can only scan one person at a time and that the target will be Sabrina Luo. Surprised, he reacts to the information. The system then confirms that the scan is complete. And the character comes to life. Night drapes the apartment block, cloaking everything in shadows. Silence. Inside his room, Howard laments that he wasn't warned the system could only scan one. As the AI registers a dopamine spike in his brain, the system concludes that he's enjoying it. He denies it, saying he only found it fascinating to include an NPC assistant in the game. The entity tells him that the Dreamland system will activate at midnight and that he must find a place to sleep, yet Howard expresses concern. His eyes suddenly widen. While lying in bed, he confesses. He's too nervous to sleep, yet the system says it had already foreseen this reaction. The AI then says it will interfere with his ascending reticular activating system, inducing sleep. A swarm of mathematical formulas hovers in front of him, swirling in the air. Soon his body relaxes and he drifts into a deep sleep. Suddenly he jolts awake and collapses to the floor. A woman. She approaches and says, "We've finally met," prompting him to ask who she is. She reveals herself as the AI assistant he'd been speaking with in the Dreamland system, asking him to call her AI-63. Howard asks if the test has already started, but she reminds him that supplies are essential before any battle, and that a shop lets him purchase items with his credit points. AI-63 lifts a graceful staff. A number 1 glows on the wall ahead. They stand in a long hallway of numbered doors, and AI-63 points to one of them. A gleaming military machete hangs on display, priced at just 2 credit points. While walking, they spot a 100-ton truck for 40 points, a coat for 20, and food for only 1. Approaching the infinite energy battery on display, Howard's curiosity drives him to reach out. AI-63 snaps a staff tap, warning him not to touch anything unless he intends to buy it. She explains that by overcoming challenges, he can earn credit points to buy new items. Howard thanks her for the explanation and asks if there are any especially tough NPCs in the system. With a slight smile, AI-63 points to herself with her thumb. She quickly tells him that 10,000 credit points have been deducted and that she's now at his disposal, a claim he brands a blatant ripoff. AI-63 announces that Dreamland will be launched immediately if he has no further questions. Hoping he'll enjoy it, she watches as he stares at the door marked Apocalypse Revival when an invisible force shoves him through. Howard jolts awake in his bed, sits up, and scans the room in confusion. He sees that he's at home and that nothing has changed. He calls himself a fool for not having seen this coming, then heads to get ready for work. He pulls the switch, no light. In the bathroom, he realizes the lights are out. Still fully dressed, he slips silently down the stairs. Outside, the street is eerily deserted, a truck jammed in the middle of the road. He scans the empty area, wondering where everyone vanished. Looking up, he spots a low-flying military jet. Suddenly, the aircraft explodes in the sky, and he hurries behind a car for cover. He ducks as debris pours down around him. A voice echoes, heralding the apocalypse. Survival Dreamland is under attack, leaving him 180 days to fight. Stunned, he repeats the mention of. He's been shouting for 180 days, and something splatters close to him. Turning to his side, he sees a strange liquid. Water dribbled down the car's body. Without a second thought, he bolted into a run as another explosion erupted. It explodes behind him, and the sight of a plane spiraling out of control sends a shudder through him. He soon realizes, in a world where people have vanished, planes could drop from the sky at any instant. Determined, he compiles a list of supplies, planning to spend the next 180 days preparing for life after quitting his job. Before that, he decides to have a little fun and hits play on an old radio. With the radio perched on his shoulder, he walks into a men's clothing store. Standing before the mirror, he slips on a fresh coat and slides on sunglasses. He then selects a necklace and a bottle, polishing his new look. With the radio in hand, he strides down the street, feeling the new persona. Suddenly, he recalls that he has a copy of Sabrina Luo as his assistant. Leaning against a police car, he dials the radio to ask when she will arrive. A sudden sound slices the silence, and he glances sideways. A dog comes up and starts barking at him. He wonders where Sabrina Luo is and whether the game's developer has tricked him. Suddenly, a tiger steps onto the street in front of him. He turns quickly and runs as the animal's paw lunges toward him. The tiger, named Dummy, the only carnivore from the zoo, begins licking his face. An old photo reveals the tiger was raised by zookeepers and had always been docile with humans. Pulling away, he notices a peculiar feature on the tiger and deduces it escaped after the keepers disappeared. With his face still dirty, he is impressed by the level of detail the game developer has created. 7 days later, he steps into a shop clutching a bag of bottled water. With the tap shut off, he can only rely on supermarket bottles. Without power, the meat and produce are starting to spoil, attracting flies everywhere. Though he has a stash of crackers to survive on, the lack of vitamins worries him. In front of a restaurant, he spots something that could change his luck. Inside, he spots a diesel generator and remembers that his father's grocery store had an identical one. Standing beside it, he sees the unit is overheating and could explode at any moment. He realizes that arriving just a second later would have caused a power outage and ruined all the frozen meat in the fridge. Armed with a working generator and a refrigerator, he decides to settle there, planning to gather supplies during the day and tend the land at night. Holding a pickaxe, he sets to work turning the soil with determination. On day 31, the camera captures a street that's completely deserted and silent. Inside the car, Howard wonders what he will do that day. A voice beside him suggests searching for seeds, but he replies that he wondered if there was a better way. Overcome by despair, he feels ready to give up on everything. He believed that if he did it, he would wake up and everything would return to normal. His companion tries to lift his spirits, pointing out that the garlic plants have finally sprouted and that he'll soon they'll have fresh vegetables, but Howard yells that the produce isn't the issue, and he keeps complaining. That the city is filthy, swarming with flies, and he feels a deep unease about the situation. At night, the darkness and silence make him feel as if the world has abandoned him entirely. The voice mocks him, asking whether he truly has any useful real-life skills and can survive. After quitting his job, it urges him to wake up, reminding him that he's the one steering the game. Not the other way around. Howard realizes that even inside a game, they're trying to convince him. He had to surrender to reality. A sudden flash of light cut across the road, forcing him to slam on the brakes. The car skids on the pavement as he swerves to avoid another vehicle. Shocked, he sees that the other driver looks exactly like Sabrina Luo, and the two cars collide. He turns to the passenger seat, stares at the mannequin beside him, and wonders if that figure is truly Sabrina Luo. Waking up in a bed, the woman glances at the ceiling for a moment. She touches her face, feeling the bandage over the wound. Noticing the men's clothes draped around her, she quietly wonders where she is. Rising slowly, she walks to the door and opens it. Inside, a small kitchen greets her, the hum of a generator filling the air. Instantly, she recognizes the diesel engine running. She instantly hears the diesel engine whirring to life. On the table, fresh food is neatly laid out. A young man materializes, a razor in hand, remarking that she's finally awake. He mentions that he's cooked for her, then casually invites her over. At the table, she recognizes him from a former work dinner and asks his name. He replies Howard Chen, surprised she already knows him. Sabrina asks him how he managed all this, but he turns the question back on her. Curious about her month-long absence, she explains that she went back to her hometown only to find it empty, and he was the only living person she saw. Howard sees why he hadn't met her before and asks what her plan is. She answers almost automatically that she has no plan at all. Howard, decisive, suggests that she stay and live there with him. He explains that the place has everything they need and that her life will be better this way. Sabrina nods, admitting she's out of other options and that he knows she's now on his team. Before they seal the deal, she warns him she has something to say. Howard asks what it is. Calmly. Sabrina tells him he's not her type and hopes they can keep a respectful distance. Howard went quiet instantly, intrigued that she'd brought it up. Nearby, DeMannequin, standing in for Donald, steps forward and reflects on his desperate need for a friend. He remembers being judged before anyone could truly know him. With his hands clasped on the table, he accepts her conditions. Sabrina offers to look after the house while he's working, not wanting to be a burden. He agrees to the plan and tells her to get some rest. He will begin work the next day. Taking a deep breath, Howard mentally repeats that this is all just. In the game, cut off from his real life, he wakes on the 32nd day to a booming echo. From outside his room, Howard lies still in bed, puzzled by the early noise and wondering what's going on. Sabrina is working. Stopping at the foot of the stairs, she sees the floor covered in cardboard boxes. As he climbs the steps, he asks what she's been up to. Sabrina tells him she's cleaned out the. They turn a warehouse into a bedroom and hand him a walkie-talkie so they can stay connected. Surprised, he reacts to the unexpected idea and then asks about the DeMannequin he'd left there. She says she threw it away because it was creepy. Reprimanding her, he says she should have asked first, and Sabrina retorts, asking whether he really needed to. Howard explains the mannequin was his companion, just as Wilson was to Tom Hanks, something that kept him from feeling alone. She offers to fetch it back, but he declines, saying he can handle it himself. He steps on something on the floor and stops for a moment. A memory flashes back. He had collected security items from a police station and crammed them into a box. Then he realizes one of the items he was supposed to use is missing. Sabrina keeps a watchful eye on him, spotting him by the elevator. She asks whether he's going to look for supplies that day. Howard changes the subject. He proposes they do laundry and cook on their own, which leaves her wondering why. He says that by seeing each other less often, she wouldn't have to stay on guard, and he would feel less uncomfortable. Sabrina asks if he can simply act like a gentleman, reminding me that as a woman she must protect herself. He counters that her safety hinges on his own suffering, insisting he will endure constant insults and orders. Firmly looking at her, he asks why he should accept that. He declares he is not the gentleman she envisions, but he guarantees she will not be harmed. She advises her to be more pragmatic, turns her face away in silence, and ends the conversation. On day 128, a butterfly alights on the city's blooming red roses. As Howard steps inside, he sees how much the house has transformed over the past 3 months. The air feels lighter, the foul smell gone, replaced by the scent of lush greenery that now cloaks the buildings. Out in the street, Sabrina tends the plants along the pavement, turning the neighborhood into a verdant sanctuary. With her careful nurturing, the garden flourishes, ending the long-standing vegetable shortage. Yet, since their first argument, neither has spoken to the other, and Howard can no longer tolerate the silence. Inside the car, he asks Donald if Sabrina has been out of her mind for chasing the garden rats. The man in the passenger seat seems to reply that she no longer needs a social life. Setting a new goal, Howard announces they'll have to find meat now that their supply is finished. He thinks about eating rats but worries about the germs and viruses. On second thought, he suggests to Donald that fishing would be a safer, more respectable option. With the plan in place, they set off in their car, eager to visit an old friend before fishing. The vehicle pulls up. At the abandoned zoo's entrance, Howard spots a tiger at the gate, greets it, and asks how it's doing. He had been there. He stroked the dummy's belly, surprised to see it still alive. Just 2 months earlier, the animal would have. Sitting at the zoo entrance, it devours the remaining herbivores. Howard feeds him again, tossing in rats and the small animals he'd captured from the streets. He urges the tiger to ease up, reminding him it's the last piece he keeps in the freezer. Suddenly, the animals shift their gaze to the side with a swift leap. The dummy steps aside, then charges a herd of deer that bursts out from between the trees. One of them stops nearby, and Howard realizes it's a wild deer. Nature has taken over what was once one. Civilization like a tiger snapping its prey. The rain starts to fall, and a storm is gathering over the horizon as lightning slices the sky, making him wonder whether a storm is coming. The wind swells, and Howard knows it's a typhoon. The violent current pushes them. He's hurled toward the car. Battling the swirling wind, he forces the door open. He bursts into the vehicle, shouting for Donald to let him in. Inside, he wonders how a Force 10 typhoon can exist so far from the ocean, and in the quiet he watches the world warp around him. Reminding himself that he's in the land of dreams, he questions whether this disaster is part of the game, and thinks of Sabrina, who bikes up the mountain every day, likely near the summit. The car races down the streets, slicing through the storm that engulfs it. Cracked pots tumble across the floodwater, swept away by wind and rain. He remembers Sabrina, tending to her plants. Arriving at the front of the house, he sees the door wide open and wonders if she's already back. Accelerating again, he speeds through the soaked garden, while the tomato plants bend under the force of the gale and heavy rain. A new memory flashes, Sabrina scaring rats away from her vegetables. From the car, he shouts for her, unsure where to look. The winding mountain road unfolds before him, swallowed by the storm. A bolt of lightning slices the sky, briefly lighting the road. He stares wide-eyed at the silhouette ahead. Braking hard, he spots Sabrina standing by a post, completely drenched. Her leg is injured and she can barely stand. As he cradles her, he hears her muffled question about dying there. Firmly, he lifts her and replies that it won't happen. Holding a lighter, Howard sparks a small flame and uses it to ignite the crackling bonfire in the brazier. In the warm room, he asks Sabrina about the mountain mansion and whether she used to visit it often. Hugging her knees, she stays quiet. Her leg is still injured. Howard watches her in silence, taking in every restrained gesture. He declines. He cautions that an infection could be deadly, yet Sabrina maintains she can manage it alone. Feeling frustrated, he pulls back and says he just had an idea. He explains that the mountain mansion is the safest, highest refuge from the flood. He says firmly that they must rush and grab as many supplies as they can, and she asks what she should do. He says, with her injured leg, she should just rest and wait. Sabrina urges him to ventilate the space so he won't suffer from carbon monoxide poisoning. He then walks back to the old house, staring out at the storm. In the heavy rain, he takes a deep breath and senses the air growing colder. He pulls with the hood over his head, he's puzzled to see snow mingling with the raindrops. The car pushes through the water. Along the log road, the water level rises quickly around the submerged house. With a tool, he unlocks the door is submerged. Inside the flooded house, he notices the lights are out and surmises the generator has failed. The attempt fails, the freezer door swings open, flooding the room with water. He scrambles to haul as much food as he can before the appliance is lost, and a wave of chaos surges through the house, scattering everything. Vegetables drift in the current, tangled with mud and debris. He strains to snatch what's left before it's swept away. The few veggies and scraps left in the fridge will only stretch to 2 meals. When he shuts the car door, a regretful realization hits him: their supplies are nearly gone. Flooded, he confesses in a hushed tone that when he finally gives up, he'll be clueless about handling it. Turning to the mannequin, he asks what he should do to find food and save them both. Silence settles over the car as he contemplates. Suddenly, he gasps when a tiger sits on the flooded street. From inside, he yells for the dummy, pleading for help. As he draws nearer, he notices the wounds on the tiger's face and asks what happened to it. He suggests they partner for hunting, pointing out that the tiger is an adept tracker and he's armed. He urges the tiger to climb into the car, warning that the road will soon be submerged. The tiger merely gazes at the horizon, unmoving. Then Dummy turns and starts walking back to the zoo. Howard yells that he's not a dog and that the zookeepers will never come back. He reminds the animal that he'd fed it for 2 months and asks if they aren't friends. The tiger turns, roaring loudly, its reply cutting through the storm's howl. Angry with himself, Howard chastises his own overinvestment in a pointless game. When he says goodbye, he tells them he respects their choice and that he likely won't return. Rain pours down on the tiger, which remains still beneath the storm. As Howard pulls away, he tells the animal to stay strong and survive, leaving it alone in the downpour. He drives down a dark road amid the weather. While steering, Howard's eyes remain fixed ahead. He asks Donald how he stays so calm, saying he wants to learn that same composure. Suddenly, something on the road grabs his attention. The car slams on its brakes, skids across the wet surface, and on the pavement, Sabrina materializes right in front of the vehicle. Howard rushes out, runs to her, and asks what happened. She explains she was gathering rainwater so she wouldn't owe him anything, and he replies that she ended up falling, piling more work onto him, her eyes lifted in silence. Howard lifted. They carry her, dismissing her protests, while Sabrina struggles to break free. With a firm tone, Howard tells them he's had enough problems and that from now on he'll make all the decisions. When they arrive, he impatiently lays her on the bed and orders her to wait while he grabs the first aid kit, warning her that he won't show any mercy if she acts foolishly. Sabrina shouts that she can tend to her own injuries and doesn't need his aid. He retorts that he isn't happy to help her either, reminding her that they only have 2 meals left before starvation sets in. He insists she recovers fast so they can both keep working, or else they'll both be in trouble. While she cleans a wound on her arm, Sabrina asks what the plan is. As he tends to her injured leg, he tells her he spotted a herd of deer and plans to hunt the next day. She doubts they exist in the city, but Howard says they must be wild, having surfaced after people vanished. Sabrina cautions him that wild animals are clever and asks if he frightened them away. He averts his gaze, silent. The memory of the dummy chasing the deer flickers in his mind. The animals sprint in terror across the water-logged field. Howard finishes the bandage, admitting he's unsure but still has his gear in hand. Remembering this, he says he has something important to tell her. He confesses he found a pistol under her pillow while cleaning the old house. He points it at her, explaining that he had left the bullets inside. He can't keep it for himself. Howard says desperate times demand desperate measures, hoping the gesture will sway Sabrina's decision. Then he asks her to get some rest, because he must prepare for tomorrow's hunt. On day 121, the roof and the grounds were blanketed in snow. Peering out the window, he marveled at the sight of another snowfall. As he readied to depart, he recalled that the deer tend to stay lower on the mountain. His goal was a suburban area, overrun with vegetation yet not yet flooded. While drying off, he admitted to himself that Sabrina's words had struck a chord, and he wished the deer wouldn't notice him. His scent drifted through the cold air. He wondered if he could summon the courage to capture one, knowing he'd never taken down a prey before. He'd also taken fishing nets as a precaution, hoping they might snag something even without bait. Suddenly, a faint sound sliced through the silence, and the snow beside the parked car seemed to hold its breath. Moments later, a pack of wolves appeared ahead, blocking his path. In the snowy forest, Howard grips his weapon tight, listening to the thunder of deer hooves echoing across the snow. While running, he turns, trying to pinpoint the direction. Moving between the trees, he looks for Anne. In a prime spot, the hunter lifts his weapon and aims swiftly. He mourns the animals. Another disappearance. How many times has this already happened? A fresh noise suddenly grabs my attention. He keeps his focus, concluding that the deer are still nearby. He follows their tracks through the snow, but ultimately loses them. It feels as if the creatures anticipate every move he makes, pulling him along. Resting against a tree, he realizes Sabrina may have been right about his scent. He concludes that he's exhausting himself and resolves to try his luck with a fishing net. The river flows swiftly across the snow-blanketed landscape. Remembering yesterday's storm, he wonders whether he'll be able to. Fish abound in these waters. He swiftly casts the net into the river, letting the mesh sink into the current. He mutters that he only has one net and can't afford to lose it. The rope stays tied to the bank. Suddenly, the line snaps taut with a tremendous pull. Something yanks him violently, and he reacts instinctively. The impact drags him forward, and Howard is thrust into the icy water. His gun slipped to the side, and he sank completely, disappearing beneath the river's surface. The young man surfaced, gasping for air, hauling himself out and cursing the disastrous day as he tried to warm himself. He admits he's freezing and should probably head home, but then a deer suddenly appears right in front of him. Shocked, he watches it up close. Wondering where he left his rifle, maybe it fell into the river. He snatches a shotgun, thinking it'll work at short range, weapon in hand. He steadies his aim, convinced this is his only chance. Howard draws a deep breath, then pulls the trigger. The deer calmly drinks from a patch of melting snow. He fires. The shot echoes. He crashes into a tree, and the deer bolts away. His nose throbs from the impact, and he comments that the developers really nailed the realism. He calls himself a fool for losing his gear and getting hurt. His stomach growls, and he wonders if he'll starve out here. Suddenly, a howl slices through the silence. In the distance, two silhouettes emerge through the snow. 2 wolves are coming. Howard sniffs the tracks on the pale ground, senses the looming danger, and pulls out his shotgun. Yet the animals simply turn and walk away. Confused by their sudden departure, he watches until they disappear. Back at the house, he strides up to the gate. Inside, Sabrina sits by a crackling fire. She nods, remarking on his return. "What's been keeping you busy?" she asks. Howard tells her he fell into the river and just wants to warm up. Sabrina chuckles. He turns his back to her and apologizes, shying from her gaze. She plays along, pretending not to see. On the bed, a wallet is open, holding a picture of him with another woman. Sabrina asks, is the woman in the photo his girlfriend? Howard corrects her, saying it's his ex. She comments that the girl looks cute and asks why they broke up. He explains he was looking for a family, but she wasn't ready to settle down. Then he asks about Sabrina's love life. She confirms she's one and says his name is Lawrence, a tech company executive. Howard calls him brave, but says living with a woman like her must be a challenge. Annoyed, Sabrina reminds him that she's his boss. She shifts abruptly on the bed, and an awkward silence hangs between them. Howard, flustered, looks away. Sabrina, embarrassed, asks him to leave. He agrees and steps out of the room. Outside, he thinks that the agitation doesn't help him endure against the cold and hunger. On days 122 and 123, he crawls through the snow, seeing only a distant shadow of a deer. He knows that if he gets too close, all his effort will be for nothing. Lying in the Snow, he wonders that, never having fired a real gun, he's probably a bad hunter. Besides, he knows a shotgun can't cut it at long range. A gunshot rings out across the forest. The scene. Now emptiness and his inability to catch the deer feel like a bad omen. On days 124 and 125, Sabrina. She starts talking to him more, never complaining when he comes back empty-handed. Howard finds her to be. A practical mind keeps the strong desire for independence at bay. He decides not to tell her about the wolves, knowing she would insist on sharing the risk. As his strength wanes, her wounds refuse to heal and hunger gnaws at both of them. He whispers that tomorrow's trap might bring food, a deep pit hidden beneath cabbage leaves, hoping the cold will lure a deer into it. Sabrina scolds him for not consulting her, reminding him that manual work is perilous. Agreeing they're too weak to keep going, he declares that the next day will either be a triumph or a disaster. The car rolls down a snow-covered road until it stops in the middle of a white forest. Howard steps out and walks ahead. At the pit, he finds it empty. Suddenly, he spots something, tracks that show an animal barely escaped. He darts through the forest, following the trail, pleading silently that a single deer could change everything. He tumbles into the snow, and there before him are wolves with a deer's carcass. He readies the shotgun, fires, and shouts for the wolves to release his kill, but they simply snatch it and flee. Defeated, he collapses on the snow, muttering that this is all just a game. On his knees, he screams in frustration. Only a tomato and a lettuce leaf remain as food. Howard realizes that's all they have. Sabrina tells him he can have it all, saying she doesn't deserve it because she hasn't helped. He asks if she can put her pride aside for a moment, given how dire the situation is. For a moment she falls silent, then she begins to explain. Before she turned 18, she was just a puppet in the hands of others. Most of her time was spent locked in her room. Her father decided what she could and couldn't do. Young Sabrina wondered why she couldn't play with her brothers and why dreaming was forbidden. One day her father tore up her drawing, saying she would one day leave the family, just like her mother did. He claimed that without the family's power she would be nothing, and that obeying him was the only way to bring honor. Her hand tightens into a fist around the torn fragments of the drawing. In the present, she says that independence is vital. It's her fighting style and the source of her confidence. Sabrina asks how that sounds and whether. It's not what he had pictured. Howard agrees that everyone is in a tough spot. He grumbles that his hard work pays off nothing and wonders if it's all pointless, because he has no clue what the future brings. Still, he says his real strength is never giving up once he makes up his mind. To act, she asks whether he's ever truly fought for his greatest desire, reminding him that the world, it's full of hardworking people, and she says the only way to be recognized is to stand out from the crowd. Regarding the rest, Sabrina says independence is the light of her life, and that he'll discover what he really wants it when he fights for a goal. Howard stays silent, listening. Then he asks if he can help. Her survival would earn him her recognition. He confesses that he hopes his superiors will one day say he's skilled at his job and the place would crumble without him. Sabrina counters that he can't prove her independence if he helps her, yet he urges her to be kind because they're in danger. She nods, saying she'll do it if she still has a voice by then. Howard grabs the food and promises he'll shine for her. Though he rises with great difficulty, he stumbles, too weak to keep standing. Then he stops and turns back, saying that if he's not backed by the third morning, there's a stream to the east. Within the mansion, he surmises she'll find him there and will know what to do. The bedroom door slams shut. Sabrina stays quiet, staring at the motionless wood. Outside, snow keeps falling on the house. Amid a hallucination, Howard holds a figure of Donald and admits that Sabrina was okay. He never truly fought. He remembers claiming he didn't give up, but now he realizes that wasn't entirely true. He sees that he's always lacked the courage to pursue his own goals. He admits that he usually picks the simplest way to flee bad places and tough decisions. He feels he could have done better with his family, his studies, and his girlfriend, yet he always hides in a safe corner to vent. When he turns around, he leaves Donald's memory behind. He promises himself he will stop complaining. He swears he'll never do that again. In the present, he steadies himself. Then he slips and tumbles down the snow-covered cliff. Inside a small metal box, the fire blazes intensely. Sabrina snatches a utensil from the kitchen's knife block, holding it above a figure sprawled on the floor. Howard lies there, eyes closed. She steadies the tool, then brings it down with force. Suddenly, she jolts awake, sitting up in bed. She gasps for air, the clock ticking to 5:58 p.m. For the first time in 3 months, doubt creeps in. Was it all just a dream? Howard's words about meeting him at the stream echo in her head as she pulls her coat tighter, wondering what desperate steps they'll need to survive. On day 127, a shovel slices through the hardened snow. Howard, half-heartedly, says half the job's already done. He pauses, staring at the white-streaked landscape. Memories flood in. The first time he slipped into the cold water, he was close to the deer. Since then, no other chance has come. He wonders if the water could mask his scent. Still, he takes a risky leap into the icy depths. Sabrina fights to stay awake. A harsh voice in her mind calls her pathetic. A vision of her father appears, accusing her of choosing a barren life by not following the path he'd set. He shouts that she's useless for attempting more than she can handle. She screams, demanding the vision vanish, insisting she can do this alone. She reaches out and presses a tomato on the small table, feeling Howard's desire for recognition surge again. She remembers the promise to wait 2 days. She decides to keep her word until dawn, determined to survive, whether he's there or not. Time passes. The clock read almost 3 a.m. on the 23rd. Lying in bed, she awakens to a sudden. A noise, her eyes unfurl slowly in the dark. A rat creeps toward the tomato on the nightstand. From her bed, Sabrina watches the scene motionless. The hallucination of her father starts to laugh. He shows up beside the rat and the tomato, asking which one she would pick. Then he says she's two. He's drained from making any choice. Then he reveals that Lawrence, the richest man in the world, is ill. He claims she could have been raised to be his ideal wife and to inherit everything, yet he accuses her. About not being able to bear even a minor hardship, she questions how she can claim to be independent. He calls her a pitiful, fragile woman who only pretends to be strong. He predicts she will. She ends alone and forgotten. The rat grips the tomato and mocks her, promising the freedom she desires. Exactly what was intended. In the forest, a deer licks the cabbage leaves that slipped out of the trap. The animal. It lifts its head to chew the bait, standing still beneath the full moon amid the snow. The portrait of her father leans over Sabrina with a stern glare. She pulls out a gun and says she's lived life to the fullest up to this point. The rat says it doesn't need her to save it. Even so, Sabrina keeps insisting she doesn't need anyone to rescue her life. The deer's eye reflects. A white landscape stretches around it. The animal takes off, clutching the cabbage leaves in its mouth. Suddenly, a gun barrel rises from the snow. A shot strikes the deer, sending it to its side. At the same time, another shot hits the rat and the tomato in the room, causing the deer to fall onto the snow. A gun and an arm soon protrude from beneath the white blanket. Howard steps out of his hiding spot. He reaches for the fallen animal. Reclining in the snow, he revels in his triumph. Meanwhile, Sabrina sinks a hefty bite into the tomato. The food cooks over the fire. She selects the tomato with deliberate care. The door opens, leaving wet footprints on the floor. Howard steps in with the deer in his arms and notes that it's already eating. Sabrina watches him in silence. He says he didn't need to rush back. His head hangs forward. Howard faints and the deer collapses on top of him. Sabrina rushes to him and asks how he is. Touching his ice-covered back, she asks if he can get up. Holding a piece of ice, she wonders if he fell into the river again. Outside, the deer meat hangs to dry in the snow. While water boils in a pot over the fire, Sabrina ladles the hot liquid into a bathtub to warm Howard. Nearby, she asks if he's feeling better. When no reply comes, she sighs. Suddenly, a hand clamps onto her wrist in the tub. She spins, startled by the abrupt tug. Howard yells her name. Sabrina looks at him, then steps closer and leans over. He asks if he has finally earned her recognition. She's taken aback, then tells him he's incredible and that without him everything would have fallen apart. Howard smiles, relieved. He remembers the last words his ex-girlfriend said before she left. "You have nothing, and all your effort will get you nowhere." Howard sets how hard it is to earn global recognition. Sabrina nods, admitting that's true. She cooks a fragrant broth of deer meat over the fire, then lifts the bowl and says, "It's ready, time to eat." He remains motionless in bed. She approaches, checks his breathing, and is relieved to see he's still alive. Holding a spoon, she tells him, "You owe me nothing. You'll be fine soon," and then gently touches his face. She leans over Howard and hands him a bowl of broth. The digital clock reads almost midnight. Watching him shiver, she notes he still feels cold. She remembers she's already wrapped him in 3 blankets. Still, he shakes uncontrollably, gripping the covers. Sabrina watches him for. After a moment, she decides. She settles beside him under the covers, hoping to keep him warm. She pulls him close and assures him everything will be fine. Day 130 arrives, ushering in a new chapter for their shared future. Morning, Howard opens his eyes slowly and wakes. A noise makes him turn in bed. I was trying to figure out where the noise came from, while Sabrina slept soundly on the other side. His eyes widened in surprise. Something sends a shiver down his spine. He realizes he's not alone. Awakening, Sabrina asks if he's awake yet. She starts to drift away, but Howard catches her. She stops him with a wrist. His voice is weak as he says he still feels sick, drawing closer to her. He immediately wonders what he just said. His grip on her hand loosens, an almost fragile misunderstanding. Sabrina reminds him that he said he'd broken up with his girlfriend and asks to hear the reason again. He explains it was because she thought they were too young to settle down, but Sabrina insists on knowing the other reason. Silence hangs in the air for a moment. Finally, Howard reveals the other motivation was his desire to have a family. With a subtle shift, Sabrina steps closer and confesses she wants the same. He looks at her, asking if she didn't want to prove she was a strong, independent woman. She replies that she's trying to do that right now. In her thoughts, she doubts whether success truly grants freedom. She says the goal was simply a line she drew to escape. She points out that everything else never really mattered, yet she wonders if that would just mean moving from one prison to another. Venting, she admits she has never made a decision for herself and cannot claim to be independent. Howard confesses he doesn't know if she could do it because he'd never set his own boundaries. Then Sabrina takes his hands and asks if he wants to start a family with her. Wordless, he hesitates. She apologizes, saying she just realized she needs her own life, but Howard grips her hands tightly and says that's exactly what he wants. With a choked voice, he confesses that hard work without recognition had pushed him away from the idea of a family, yet now success feels close. Sabrina assures him they'll survive, and he agrees that a family is what drives him. Their eyes meet for a moment, and without a word, they kiss. Snow drifts silently across the house outside. Sabrina meets his gaze with a knowing look, and for a moment they feel a deep, unspoken connection. Hesitant, he murmurs whether this is the right time and calls her his wife. A gentle hand stops him. She firmly reminds him that they aren't married yet, just 2 adults living together, bound by mutual respect and support. Embarrassed, Howard averts his gaze. She takes a deep breath, and his face freezes with his mouth slightly open. A painful memory surfaces in Sabrina's mind, her younger self feeling powerless, her father's voice echoing how fast time has passed. He steps back, observing her with a cold distance. Finally, he turns into Claire's moment to learn how the world works. In her memory, Sabrina S. He says he'll give her a harsh lesson, and, calling for the others, he directs them into the room. A man and a woman emerge, and she greets him, calling him boss. He replies coldly, telling them to watch what they do. On the couch, it unfolds. The couple nods in agreement. Young Sabrina closes her eyes, and a light touch rests on her head. She flinches. Gripping her shoulders, her father commands her to watch and learn. Handle Lawrence do. As the scene unfolds, he notes they must look like a father and she became his daughter, and he would rename her. From then on, she was known as Sabrina Luo. In the present, her voice echoes, proclaiming that the two now share a renewed respect for one another. Sabrina invites him and suggests they explore the meaning of their existence, yet Howard can barely. He senses a connection they've just forged, and then, surprised, realizes that this moment is entirely new to Sabrina. 2. On day 160, he wakes up and realizes they've been living like a couple for a month. Reflecting on the past month, he acknowledges it's been fairly satisfying. However, he still feels regret for not having been. Fully recovered from the frostbite, he can finally work. With the deer meat gone, he walks out. In the snow-covered yard, the constant cold turns the river into ice, and they cut holes to fish. Sabrina has also been busy building a vegetable greenhouse, which is almost finished. Suddenly, she calls out for him to wait, and with a smile she tells him she has a gift for him. Howard quips that nothing thrills him more than a long, tight hug. A gunshot shatters the forest, plunging it into silence, and a deer collapses into the snow while another watches. He admits it's not as comforting as a hug, but the deer skin poncho will do. He reflects on how hunting deer once seemed impossible, yet everything has changed for the better. The poncho blends him into the white snow. Soon, a car rolls down the snowy road. Howard's eyes stay locked on the path ahead, but from a glance in the side window, he catches Sabrina's reflection. The vehicle rests on a blanket of snow. For a moment, old memories flash before his eyes. Crossing the snowy road, he arrives at an urban area where a crashed plane lies atop a car. A rusted sign reads Petting Zoo. He pushes the gates open, calling out for Dummy, asking if he's still alive. Holding a piece of meat, he says he brought something special. A distant roar slices through the quiet, making him shudder. He trudges through the snow, the pain throbbing in his leg. Suddenly, he stops, spotting something ahead. A pack of wolves encircles Dummy's body. He falls to his knees and screams at the beasts. The wolves turn, growling. Raising his gun, he fires. The shot lands, and he yells for them to back off. Startled, the wolves scatter, vanishing into the wreckage. Shaking, he walks over and tells the dummy that he's safe. His face turns sad as he looks at the animal's condition. The tiger strains to lift its head, gasping for breath. Howard reaches out to touch his companion's body. In his memory, the animal licks his face affectionately. He cradles the tiger's head with both hands, as if saying goodbye. Another memory centers on his feet. Facing the tiger, he mutters an apology for the delay. His eyes scan the wounded beast. With a choked voice, he grips the shotgun and promises that soon there will be no more pain. He says he'll miss it and swears revenge. His reflection shimmers in the still tiger's eye. A tear rolls down his face after he ends his friend's suffering. Howard sinks into the warm tub water, alone. Then Sabrina slips in behind him and asks what. She noticed his downcast expression and pulled him into a hug, even as he murmured that it was nothing. He says the world is getting colder and more dangerous, and in a low voice, he asks her to stay. Stay home for the next few days, saying it's too risky outside. She agrees, mentioning she still has. She worked on the greenhouse and warned him to be careful. Sabrina leaned in and kissed him softly. In his memory, he walked through the snow, homeless and cold, drowning in his own sorrow. He leans his head against her chest, realizing that finally he has what he has always sought. Yearning, wild creatures stalk the darkness. Quietly, he vows not to let. Anything that threatens their beautiful home will not be tolerated. With his gaze fixed on her, a fierce spark gleams in his eyes. He swears to wipe out anyone who dares invade his territory. Cloaked as a deer, he slides through the snow, a shotgun at his side. Curious about who his next prey will be, a pack of wolves emerges from deep in the forest and begins to chase him. Encased in snow, he senses the threat tightening. Suddenly, a massive grizzly emerges from behind him. With a thunderous roar it lunges, jaws wide. The deer costume tears, the fabric shredding amid swirling snow, while wolves howl around them. One of them perks its ears and rushes toward a bush moving with antlers. A clean shot suddenly strikes the wolf, and its howl of pain echoes across the frozen forest. Howard steps out of the snow, knife in hand, and with a swift lunge attacks the animal. The echo of the clash flickers in his eye. In the bedroom, Sabrina beckons him as they lie together in bed. He turns over and asks what's wrong. She presses him to explain, noting he's been acting strange all day, and offers to help. He thinks he can't tell her about the fight with the wolves. Hugging her, he assures her it's nothing and urges her to go back to sleep, quietly warning that 3 remain. In the trees, a wolf pack glares into the darkness. The wolves spread in all directions, racing across the snow. One stops suddenly while the others keep on moving. Lowering its snout, it sniffs the frozen ground, then moves forward with slow, cautious steps, alert to every sound. The scent guides it toward a bush where a small thing hides. Creeping down, the wolf peers through the leaves. A short howl rings out, calling its companions. As it approaches, it nips the fake bait on a shotgun barrel. The trap springs, and a bullet tears through the forest air. Only 2 wolves linger in the shadows, while a deer-shaped silhouette slips silently among the trees. From the gloom, a howl rises, and his triumph terrifies the remaining animals. The last 2 pull back, hesitant. But one of them turned back, letting out a defiant howl. It was day 170 10 days into the wolf hunt. A gunshot hits a bottle, shattering the glass in the cold air. While honing his aim, Howard reflects on the 2 wolves who vanished without a trace. The memory of their fierce gaze haunts him, and he vows he will not be defeated like a dummy. Only after eliminating the last survivors of the pack will he find peace. From afar, Sabrina's voice calls out to him. She smiles, announcing that dinner will be steamed fish and roasted meat, proud of her progress as a cook. He declines, saying he will clean the tent and be gone for a few days. Her face falls and her head drops in response. In a quiet tone, she asks why he leaves so early and returns so late, too busy to share a meal with her. Howard apologizes, saying he can't rest until he finishes a crucial task. He turns his back and avoids looking at her. Sabrina urges him to at least tell her what it is. Yet he feels he can't bring up the danger, thinking she'd be too proud to just stand by. He walks away, muttering that nothing's serious. A tear rolls down Sabrina's cheek as she watches him leave. Day 173. A sudden bang woke Sabrina from her bed, and she glanced out the window. She shouts his name, and another thud echoes from outside. Howard is hammering boards into a window frame. She approaches and asks what he's doing. He answers without hesitation that the cold is getting worse. He explains he just wants to reinforce the windows and will be done soon. Crossing her arms, she insists she never asked to be protected. He looks away and changes the subject, asking if there's anything to eat. Yet Sabrina stays firm, telling him he's acting as if their conflicts had simply vanished. Turning to her, Howard counters that she's wrong. She admits they rushed their relationship and asks if he saw it as just a one-night stand. He denies it, claiming all he did was to protect their home, while she insists she deserves the truth. Screaming, Sabrina declares their home was founded on mutual respect and demands that respect. Howard looked down, tense. Her voice rose as she reminded him of their agreement. She would stay home while he hunted for food since she couldn't help him out there. Howard asked her to stay home for a few days, promising to let her know once everything was resolved. Sabrina listened in silence. She turns and starts to walk away slowly. He says he's out of nails and has to go too. At the hardware store, he ponders that the two wolves are mocking him, while the heavy snow will soon erase their tracks. With the temperature falling to almost 30 degrees below zero, he concludes he has to halt the hunt. Now his main concern is staying warm and reinforcing the doors and windows to keep the wolves out. Inside the car, he reflects on how anxious Sabrina has become and how much he despises arguing with her. He taps the closed shop's door. Wearing a deer costume, he forces. He works on the entrance until it opens. Inside, he sees the site is well preserved and knows he'll finally find the tools he needs. While looking for nails, wire, and tape, he pulls someone into a hug from behind. His fingers brush a small device on the table. Turning, he grabs a manual left there. The book contains instructions for maintaining diesel generators. Amazed, he puts a hand over his mouth. Scanning the pages, he realizes he can finally repair the generator. Suddenly, the monitor beside him flickers to life. He turns, staring at the glowing screen where the digital face of AI-63 appears, saying, "It's been ages since our last meeting." Howard stays still, silent. Then he remembers that it's all a dream, an almost forgotten dream. The AI alerts him that his apocalyptic survival dream will end in 1 week. Stunned, he can only mutter a single word, "What?" as he reads the note on the front door. Sabrina finishes writing. She steps out into the snow, pulling a rolling suitcase behind her. Before she leaves, she casts one last glance over her shoulder. In the note she leaves, she says they need some time apart and asks him not to look for her. Continuing on her way, she departs without hesitation. In the store, Howard steps on the broken screen of the monitor. He zips up his backpack, tucking it over his shoulder, and remarks that he's got the maintenance tools and the power should be back on. Two wolves approach the store's entrance. He turns his body toward the door, and the other two burst in, and he calls their audacity. He admits he's understood, confronting their pack. The animals step forward, swarming into the store, while the pair charges after him. With a steady gaze, he says they've learned their lesson. He keeps his focus on the two wolves, positioned in an aisle, watching them from the entrance. Then he glances to the side. Dashing out, he runs with the wolves hot on his heels. His car rolls by itself down the street. He sprints toward it. When he stumbles and falls in the snow, cursing, he says his leg has gone numb again. A wolf attacks him, dragging him through the snow, pinning him down. With effort, he grabs the collar of his coat. The other wolf bites his backpack and pulls hard. The first wolf attacks his shoulder. Shrugging off his backpack, he pushes one of the wolves aside and uses. He holds the bag to keep the other at bay. Pulling a tool, he readies to fight back. Shouting, he takes. You knock one wolf down, but the other seizes his arm. Then an attack comes from behind. Spitting rapidly, he slams the tool at the wolf. It shatters and tumbles into the snow. He eyes the shattered handle and complains about its shoddy quality. The wolf lunges again to attack him. Just before delivering the final blow, the animal looks at itself, but the wolf reaches for his. He throws a shoulder attack. Raising the tool's handle, Howard tries to counterattack, striking The animal was tough, but he answered with resolve. The wolf recoiled from the hit. Howard struck again. Striking the wolf with the handle, he refuses to back down. Persisting with the blows, he continues his assault. He lands another powerful blow on the animal. With effort, he rises and steadies himself. The tool's handle falls into the snow beside the neutralized beast. Grabbing his backpack, he secures it to his body. Staggering, he pulls back, leaving the defeated wolves behind. In the shop, he shouts at the screen that he has a question. Curiously, he wants to know if the fantasy world will go on after he leaves, and the Sabrina will survive on its own. Raising his voice, he says he can't abandon her and wants to stay. Now the last week with the wolf slips through the snow. It bites the backpack strap, trying to stop him, and Howard asks if it longs for revenge. The wolf replies it can't give that. Instead, it says it needs the backpack to protect her, even if it can't stay by her side. In a memory, frightened Sabrina asks if they'll escape. Holding her, Howard assures her they will. In the car, Sabrina quietly wipes away a tear. The red vehicle sits on the snow-covered roadside, waiting. Howard snatches the backpack from the wolf's mouth and regains control. On day 177, a flashback shows his fist striking the dashboard. In the heat of the fight, he's hurled into the car and loses control. Then the wolves yank him from the vehicle, and he tumbles into the snow. He digs into the car and declares he's not going to stop now. A heavy object slides across the floor. Quickly grabbing it, he wonders when Sabrina had hidden it there. With the item in hand, he turns to the wolves. He moves against the animals through the open door. A metallic clang rings off the side of the car as he steps inside. Looking at his injured hand, he concentrates on restoring the parts. Confident that fixing the generator will improve Sabrina's chances, he takes a deep breath. The car rumbles across the snow, but suddenly stalls. He sees the oil has frozen and knows he must warm the engine to get it running. Glancing at the cut on his hand, he realizes he can't wait. The weary wolf staggers through the snow. Inside the car, Howard presses his forehead to the steering wheel and says, "I hate this." The animal stares back at him, knowing it had done everything it could before the end. He wakes in bed, feeling bandages clinging to his face and head. Seeing Sabrina by his side, he asks what happened and realizes he's home. She tells him she found him passed out beside the broken-down car and brought him back. He admits he thought it was over. Sabrina says she felt the same when she saw him. Howard asks if she saw anything around him while she was rescuing him. Sabrina replies he was holding the bag, which she brought with her. Getting out of bed, he explains the parts are for fixing the generator. She urges him to pause, saying he's too weak and needs rest, but he refuses, apologizing. He tells her this is the last item on his bucket list. Sabrina lowers her head and lets him go. She knows she won't be heard. Howard remains silent for a moment as the garage door lifts. In the icy night, he works steadily in the garage, determined to fix the generator. The house lights. A flicker glows amid the blizzard. Outside, he rises beneath fresh light. Satisfied, he says all the way. The effort paid off. Calling for Sabrina, he yells that the power is back. In the kitchen, she chops. He points at the vegetables and calls him a fool. Howard cheers as he strides across the yard toward the house, but he stops abruptly midway along the path. His eyes fix on the red car, recalling that Sabrina had been driving. He drives it home. Seeing the deployed airbag and the dented front end, he wonders about the vehicle. He made it through. Coughing beside the red car, Howard huffs as he crouches near the front. His coughing lingers as he glances at the wheel. Pulling something from the tire chain, he discovers sharp fragments stuck. There, in a memory, a wolf charges at the car. Roaring, it advances without fear and slams into the front of the vehicle, lunging with great force. In the present, he examines the fragment in his hand. With effort, he pulls himself upright, yet he loses his balance and stumbles. He leans against the car to steady himself, coughing again. His bandaged hand throbs, a reminder that the fight took its toll. Knowing he won't hold out much longer without help, he lets out a heavy breath. His gaze lands on the dented hood, and he immediately knows a tree caused the damage. In his recollection, a wolf darts beside the car. Sabrina drives at full throttle, violently crashing into a tree and losing control. Back in the present, Howard coughs while staring into the vehicle. He limps away from the car, and the house's lights glow in the snowy night. Supplies dangle on a wooden frame to dry. In the kitchen, Sabrina chops vegetables with a knife, while Howard comes up from behind to hug her by the waist. He thanks her for everything she's done for him. She pokes fun, asking when he became so clingy, but he simply apologizes. Howard proposes a stew for dinner. She calls him silly, but smiles. On day 178, the city still lies frozen under snow, yet icy drips begin to fall from the trees. Staring out the window, Sabrina spots the white landscape and announces the sun is up. She pulls back the curtains and tells Howard the storm is finally over. She turns toward him and then scans the room. As she walks to the bed, she asks what's wrong with him. Lying down, Howard says he's exhausted. She worries it could be a cold and offers to fetch some medicine. She walks over to the dresser and opens a drawer, but Howard calls her name, so she turns back to him. She lifts a glass and laments that such a competent employee never earned the boss's recognition. While she tops off the glass, she assures him she would have named him Employee of the Quarter if they were still at the company. He thanks his boss and his beloved wife. Sabrina gives him the medicine, reminding him that she hasn't agreed to marry him yet and wishes him a quick recovery. He reaches for the glass, but jerks his hand away in an instant. Howard stares at the shattered pieces, pain flashing across his face. Sabrina asks if he's okay. The glass falls and shatters on the floor. In a daydream, Sabrina twirls, opens her eyes, pulls back the sheet, and declares quickly now she's uncovered the trick. Standing beside the bed, she accuses him of faking illness just to make her worry. Leaning over him, she says she won't hold it against him and asks if he needs anything. In the fantasy, Howard steps closer as they talk. Back in reality, he asks her to get up so they can speak. Sabrina watches him with a worried look, silent. She then asks if he can't get up. His hand grips the sheet tight. With tears streaming, she shakes him and yells for him to get up. Howard says he doesn't have much time left to explain, his clock is ticking. He advises her to head north for supplies once the gas, which will last 3 months, runs out. Then he points out that a bucket in the warehouse holds labeled vegetable seeds. When he asks if she knows how to run the diesel generator, he assures her the manual is simple. Finally, he advises her to buy a bigger car, choose a house that can withstand the cold, and keep practicing her defensive skills. On day 180, his figure erupts amid a blinding glow. Standing on the porch, Sabrina surveys the view and claims the snow has ceased, but he reminds her it was only yesterday. She notes the warmer weather and says the temperature will soon rise above freezing. She reveals her plan. Once the snow melts, she'll head north to find other survivors. Howard lets out a sigh and calls her name. He asks, "Did you ever love me?" Sabrina stares at him in silence for a few moments before replying, "No." A faint smile touches his lips as he says, "I have no more worries now." Closing his eyes, he feels it's time to wake from the dream. Sabrina questions how she could love him, calling him stubborn and dismissive of other people's feelings. With tears in her eyes, she says he has no redeeming qualities and never offered her comfort when she was sad. Holding his hand, she laments that he handles everything on his own, but kneeling keeps pointing out that he leaves a mess and starts arguing whenever. She begged him to stop, tears streaming as she called him an idiot. AI-63 stands beside Howard, who has fallen. Facing a glowing portal, the dream's entrance begins to shut. The artificial intelligence. He cheers him on for beating the apocalyptic survival challenge, and Howard slowly comes to. He sits upright, cradles his head, and asks what happened, saying he feels like he's already lived through a lot. She explains that it's normal to forget details, so the dream doesn't get tangled with reality, and AI-63 assures him that in a month he'll gradually regain every memory. Howard says he still remembers something. The AI watches him, waiting for him to keep talking. Tears spill as he admits he can't stop feeling sad over an important memory he mustn't forget. He asks if the dream world will continue. AI-63 says it was just a game and it's over. She reminds him it was only a dream, that he has a real life to live. Howard watches her in silence. He says that only asking that question sticks in his mind. Everything else feels unreal and confusing. Then AI-63 announces she will calculate his score. Her staff lights up. Howard follows her gaze. A screen flashes the final result, Difficulty level 0, grade B, and 50 credit points. He asks why he received a B and what criteria were used. She explains that the grade reflects the survival chances of the person left behind in the fantasy world, and that if he were the sole survivor, he would have earned only a D. By fending off the beast and generating electricity, he boosts his partner's chances of survival and earns a higher grade. But if he'd gathered equipment, food, built a transmission station to locate other survivors, or even tamed the wild beasts for his own benefit, he would have achieved an S grade. Howard defends himself as just an ordinary human, yet she counters that the essence of games is to offer experiences impossible in real life. AI-63 reports that this survival challenge was only a level 0 trial for beginners, and that the official game will launch in a month. Her hand slides closer to Howard's shoulder. A screen lights up with a Frankenstein invasion countdown as the AI asks how people's lives could be improved by her help. She replies that the same criteria will be applied in future tests to awaken his sense of justice in real situations. Howard then says human beings form a team with a shared destiny. He also mentions that he must consider whether he'll keep playing since he felt ill. Exhausted, but she reminds him of his joyous moments. AI-63 notes he lived those happiest times beside her. A picture surfaces of him with Sabrina Luho. To his surprise, he asks about his time with Ms. Luho. Howard insists she turn off the image and respect his privacy, yet she still explains. He tried to relax, saying she's just a robot with no emotions. Worried, he asks if Ms. Luho will feel them. He's worried about real-life memories, yet the AI assures him everything remains in the virtual world. Still, he's suspicious. He doubts the company's legitimacy and asks how he can get out. She explains that too. Open the system menu, rub his left eye, and repeat the gesture to actually contact her. While he does this, AI-63 asks if he wants the reward for the completed challenge and Howard. He asks if it's just merchandise. He says it's better than nothing and asks them to send it to. He gives his workplace address. The AI repositions her staff and the surrounding area. The scenery begins to fade. Howard asks, "What's happening?" As she disappears, AI-63 tells him not to panic. While the system selects the appropriate rewards, she keeps fading yet continues to reinforce the explanation. Alone in the dark, he asks what she meant and calls out to her, realizing he can see nothing. Two huge eyes open in the darkness, locking onto him. A massive wolf emerges, its howl echoing across the snow-blanketed landscape. Howard recalls fighting wolves in the past. A picture of confronting the animal pops into his mind. A heavy footfall on the snow snaps his attention to the sound. A gigantic man strides toward him. He readies his spear. He hurls it toward the wolf, and it lands squarely on the beast. The wolf is pinned to the ground as Howard watches, stunned. A notification tells him he's earned an excellent hunting skill. Precise throw. Intrigued, Howard asks what a precise throw really is. He jolts awake to the shrill of his alarm clock, which reads 7 a.m. on Monday, September 4. Slowly pulling himself upright, he tries to grasp the situation. Then he asks why the system would have to be forced into action. Rubbing his left eye, he tries to clear his thoughts. Staring at his own hand, he wonders where the system went and why everything has vanished. Still baffled, he wonders whether he's still dreaming or if the dream has ended. In the virtual space, warning lights flash across the metal ceiling. Alone, AI-63 wonders why Howard Chen was forcibly disconnected. A new alert surfaces, reporting system failures and the loss of the memory control function. She promptly orders the error code to be tracked. The system informs her that the code is ZS001 and that additional data is loading. A large screen before her displays the image of Sabrina Luel asleep. Then the screen shifts to show Sabrina walking, holding a dangerous object in her hand. The shot pulls closer, capturing her lifting the object. AI-63 muses on why a fresh dream could arise inside an already existing one. She orders the glitch to be fixed, but the system reports that no solutions exist in the database. Anointed, the AI remarks that she's only a butler robot and questions whether she'll have to code the fix herself. In reality, Sabrina Lewell wakes up in her bed. Two women beside her ask if she's finally awake. Tears in her eyes, Sabrina watches them in silence. One of them wants to know what happened that night. She says she had a long dream, but she can't remember the details. Then she asks what the two of them were doing in her room. The women exchange a silent glance. The nurse explains she was sleepwalking the night before and asks if she remembers anything. Sabrina then wants to know what she did while she was asleep. The employee says she picked up a dangerous object in the kitchen and began murmuring. Recalling the scene, the employee says she saw Sabrina there, holding that object and repeatedly apologizing. As Sabrina cries, a picture of Howard flickers beside her. The nurse explains she called the secretary out of fear of an accident, and the woman suggests Sabrina take a few days off work. Tears streaking her face, Sabrina insists it wasn't a dream. Covering her face with her hands, she confesses it was something far beyond a dream. Amid the traffic's roar, Howard confronts the city's chaos. As he walks through a crowded square, he watches everything with careful attention. A man collides with Howard's shoulder in the middle of the crowd, the pedestrians scolding him to be more careful. Howard simply apologizes. He ponders how hard it is to readjust to ordinary life amid so many people. When he stops before a food stall, the vendor asks if he wants his usual, and Howard agrees. The man casually offers to set him up on a date with his relative's daughter. The vendor watches him in a quiet pause. A spark bursts from the steamer as Howard extends his hands, and the man asks if he feels cold. With a faint smile, he says he's just a bit chilly. The dream felt so vivid that he can still sense its temperature. Still, the vendor pushes to lock in a date, but Howard grins and announces he now has a girlfriend. He falls quiet for a beat, his eyes drifting off. Then the memory of Sabrina Lua in the snow flashes before him. He heads into the Grand Glorial building, checks his phone, and realizes he's almost late, feeling as if it's been ages since he's been to work. A hand brushes his shoulder as someone calls his name. Startled, he turns and greets Donald, remarking it's been a while. It had been a while since they last saw each other. With a confused expression, Donald asks if they didn't have. "We ate together the night before." Howard apologized, saying he's still not sober because for him. 6 months have passed. His colleague urges him to be careful, as their department could be laid off. It was either turned off or even shut down. Curious to find out what had happened, I asked, and Donald explained. The board will launch a marketing division mirroring theirs, bracing for the worst. His friend says Mr. Wang will probably fire him first, but Howard insists he'll resign anyway. He smiles softly, remarking that the world is vast and wonderful, and questions why he should. Follow another's rules. The elevator arrives as Donald watches him in silence. Then his colleague notes that Howard has changed. As he gets into the elevator, Donald mentions he would usually be complaining by now. As he sits at his desk, Howard accepts that he thinks differently. A memory of the dream surfaces, and he realizes he has grown accustomed to working hard and living his own life. Leaning back in his chair, he looks at his desk. He wonders what to do next, feeling like it's been ages since he was last here. He pulls out a notebook, sits down, and starts jotting a to-do list, only to immediately wonder if that's the right move. He tears the page out, recalling his duty to gather customer feedback. Then he crumples it tightly in his fingers, hurls the paper ball toward the trash can, and watches it land. He was right on target. Howard turned slowly, staring at the bin. Seated, he wondered what. That feeling settled in him. He ripped another sheet from the notebook, determined to repeat the test. Across the room, the trash can remain still. With his eyes locked on the target, he readies the next throw. His view of the world around him begins to shift. The route from his hand to the bin sharpens into a crisp, precise line. The trajectory from his hand to the bin sharpens into a precise line. He throws the paper ball. It cuts across the office and lands perfectly in the distant bin. Howard realizes his body had fine-tuned the angle and force. It operates on its own. Intrigued, he wonders where this new skill came from. He recalls AI 63 asking about. A reward surfaces in his thoughts, and he remembers the notification about the precise throw. Sitting at his desk, he wonders how this could be real, since he had thought it was just a game. Resolved, he decides to test his skill from an even greater distance, his gaze locked in focus. He hurls another paper ball, and it lands squarely on Mr. Wang's face as he passes by in the hallway. The paper drops to the floor, and everyone in the office stays silent. Mr. Wang turned slowly, telling Howard to follow him to his office. It was only then that he realized that. Just as Donald had warned, he really slipped up. As Howard walks through the office, he hears a colleague say he's finished, and the others label him naive for not knowing about the layoffs. One of them thinks nobody actually told him, and another staff member says he's heard Howard is deep in debt. From afar, Donald watches the scene, puzzling over what's wrong with his friend today. Inside the room, Mr. Wang offers him a seat. Howard stands motionless before his boss's desk. While pouring a cup, the manager repeats his name in a serious tone. Then he acknowledges that he really shouldn't have underestimated him. Howard eyes him in quiet for a moment, then cuts straight to the point. Despite the tiny slip-up, he still owed last month's wages. With a puzzled look, the manager asks whether he might have forgotten something. Howard asks what. He wonders if he's discovered the secret online account. Suddenly, Mr. Wang places a hand on his shoulder and says he's deeply grateful for everything he's learned over the past 2 years. He then reveals that the company is launching a new department, headed by Vice President Liu, who is keen to add him to his team. He touches Howard's cheek, asking when he first became friends with Mr. Liu, but Howard says he has no idea who that is. The manager points out that, just as he has, Mr. Liu must have spotted the employee's huge potential. Holding the cup, he says he always sensed Howard's importance, so he gave him extra tasks to learn the ropes. Countly, Howard says he's been thinking about quitting. To his surprise, Mr. Wang says a great opportunity has just emerged. He leans in and whispers that the average salary and the new department will rise by 20%. Back at his desk, Donald asks whether he really could have been moved that easily into the new sector. Howard smiles and says that, unsure of where to go, staying a bit longer would be better. A coworker rises, glares at him, demanding to know why he was chosen. He claims to be the team leader, boasts of his major contributions, and insists he deserves the new job, questioning what Howard did to earn it. A voice snaps, "Shut up," and the employee turns to see a man standing behind him. Mr. Wang discreetly clears his throat to capture their attention. With a warm tone, he apologizes to the newcomer for the confusion and invites him inside. Mr. Liu comments on the department's atmosphere and asks whether they doubt his choice of an employee. The employee immediately raises his hands and denies questioning Mr. Liu's decision. Mr. Wang berates him, calling him perpetually reckless and insisting the position should go to someone more qualified. His coworker glares at him, unsure how to respond. The manager then announces that Howard's transfer will trigger a redistribution of duties under a new team leader. Turning to Donald, he asks if he'll take the role. Donald accepts and vows to do a good job. Mr. Wang dismisses Howard for the rest of the day and tells him to pack up for the new department. Howard silently agrees. Later, Mr. Liu informs him that after work the new department will host a team party. He explains they'll discuss plans and meet their new colleagues at the event, and Howard confirms he understands. Before he leaves, Mr. Liu reassures everyone that no one in the advertising department will be laid off. After that, he says goodbye and exits the room with Mr. Wang. Howard watches the two of them leave the office, eyes fixed. Mr. Liu sits alone in the Grand Glory log building, sifting through Howard Chen's resume while remembering Sabrina's request to bring a new employee on board. Suddenly, Leader Donald gathers the team to announce that the department didn't hit its monthly goal. Ignoring his words, one employee fiddles with his phone while another crosses his legs, clearly uninterested. He realizes nobody has replied to his announcement. An employee steps up and says he still needs more leadership experience. A coworker remarks that because Howard has always said he'd quit, nobody will support him if he fails. They quickly tell him to relax, noting that the outcome is the same whether they work hard or not. Also, Howard's mother calls to ask if he'll be home for the spring festival, noting she hasn't seen him in 2 years. Gently, he asks whether she and his father are doing okay. She tells him to take care of himself. Howard reassures her that he's fine, and she regretfully laments all that his son has endured. She's been through it, but he tells her all will be fine. As he ends the call, the woman approaches. He confirms that he is Howard Chen. She introduces herself as Sandy Dai, a marketing team leader. In the department, she says she recognized him from his payroll photo. He greets her each quarter and she asks if he's going to the department party, and Howard instantly recognizes the venue as the same mansion tied to his memories of Sabrina. Grinning, Sandy says Mr. Lee loves. She hosts parties at his house and invites him to join her. He agrees to go along without. She hesitates. Before they leave, she warns him that Mr. Lee was obsessed with cleanliness, and he asks what he should watch out for, and Sandy replies, for example, that he needs to wipe his shoes before. He steps inside to keep the floor clean. Suddenly, a memory of him coming home and calling for Sabrina flashes up in his thoughts. His muddy shoes have left a trail across the floor. Howard fully grasps his new boss's warning. She also tells him to avoid the host's bathroom and suggests he go there before the party. He recalls Sabrina scolding him for his bathroom habits. Soon after, Sandy warns him to avoid every other room in the mansion, especially Mr. Lee's bedroom, where a memory of a past moment lingers. She notices his unease and asks what's wrong, pointing out that he looks pale. Howard tries to hide it, assuring her he's fine. Suddenly, Sandy's scream echoes as he shouts for someone to stop him. A suspect darts down the street, trailed by a crowd. Howard watches the man leap over a fence and keep running. On a whim, he snatches the bag from Sandy's hands. She stares at him, confused, and asks what he thinks he's doing. Sandy insists he'll never reach him because the man is far off and the bag contains vital files. The fugitive keeps sprinting down the street, growing farther away. Just as the man is about to leap over the next fence, Howard leans against the nearby railing. His surroundings sharpen instantly. Fixing his gaze on the target, he concentrates on the throw, picturing both Sandy and the fugitive. The bag cuts through the air in a clean arc, striking the man's back. He stumbles and falls, scattering the papers and a purse from the bag onto the pavement. The man collides with asphalt, pinned by the impact. The crowd apprehends the thief while the victim thanks them. Howard and Sandy then collect the scattered papers. He wonders whether Sandy is upset with him for tossing her purse. Suddenly, she turns and calls out his name. Howard stands waiting for her reaction. With a smile, Sandy says he was incredible, praising him for stopping the thief and asking if he could teach her. He's surprised by her sudden change, but Sandy explains she had to play the lady on their first date. Now she sees him as a hero. Then she asks where he learned that skill, and Howard shrugs it was nothing, though she keeps insisting it was impressive. People nearby come to thank him, and Sandy suggests everyone help collect the belongings. While sifting through the scattered papers, Howard spots a business card from Agwell Capital Limited belonging to someone named Lawrence, and he shows it to Sandy, who verifies it belongs to a major partner of the company. She warns him not to show the card to anyone, since Mr. Lawrence heads one of the world's top 100 companies. The name Lawrence stirs a sense of familiarity in Howard's mind. Sandy says that Miss Luo may be dating Mr. Lawrence, and the pair are planning a cruise. Hearing this, finally, Howard remembers a crucial detail. Sabrina had mentioned it in his dream. Her partner was named Lawrence, and Howard urged her to finish gathering everything so they would. She'll be late for the party. Sandy agrees and follows him. The two arrive at the mansion as the sun sets. The sky is painted orange. Sandy says a colleague told her the party will be in the property's backyard. She checks her phone, starts to give directions, but Howard strides ahead. She cautions him to slow down, warning that he might get lost. He takes her hand and leads her along the path. When they arrive at the party, their colleagues ask why they were delayed. Surprised, Sandy asks how. He located the spot almost instantly, as if he already knew it. Howard stares at her in silence for a moment. Then his gaze locks on Sabrina Luo, chatting with a man right in the middle of the party. Mr. Liu asks. Everyone settles into their seats as the marketing department meeting begins. Sandy approaches Howard and suggests they sit together, but he warns her to behave, worried that others might misinterpret their relationship. Sabrina Luo watches quietly from the sidelines, while Sandy inquires about his age and whether he's seeing anyone. Sabrina keeps her head down, concealing any reaction. Meanwhile, Lawrence turns to the guests and announces that the company's new focus will be on e-commerce. Howard seizes the moment to ask Sandy whether Miss Luo also works in the marketing department. She confirms, noting that the division was launched under Sabrina's command. She adds that her father is the company's president, which makes her influence even greater than Mr. Liu's. Howard, surprised, asks where Mr. Liu comes from, guessing he must have powerful connections. Sandy replies that he and Miss Luo grew up together and have been close since childhood. She points out that many people see them as the perfect match, while Howard comments that everything feels confusing, asking why Sabrina broke up with Lawrence. With a finger on her lips, Sandy asks him to be quiet, noting that the rich live their own way. She admits feeling both admiration and curiosity about what it would be like to live surrounded by business giants. Howard wishes her good luck, but he knows the dream's events must stay in his imagination. There's no chance with Sabrina. Lawrence ends the meeting and signals it's time for dinner. Soft classical music begins to play in the background. Sandy remarks that the melody makes her feel like she's among the elite. With an elegant gesture, Lawrence extends his hand to Sabrina and invites her to dance, recalling their last high school dance. She accepts the invitation with a smile, remarking how quickly time flies. Howard watches her in silence, eyes never leaving her. As a waiter brings out the dishes, Sandy is impressed by the boss's generosity. While Howard ponders how much that pricey meat will set him back, she chides him for looking like a rookie and urges him to relax, reminding them to enjoy the evening. He lifts his glass, agreeing that a man must uphold his pride and dignity. They raised their glasses, watching Lawrence and Sabrina dance in the background. A flood of memory rushed back. In the dream, he felt uneasy when he realized the wine was fake, and she confirmed the flavor was off. He regretted. She'd chosen the wrong bottle, but a smile reassured him as she held glass in her hands. Sabrina told her the wine was perfectly sweet. Right now, Sabrina casts a discreet glance. She glanced over her shoulder toward the table where Howard was sitting, watching what appeared to be a harmonious scene. Howard observes how well Mr. Liu treats his employees. A nearby voice comments on Mr. Liu. Miss Lua and he grew up together, clearly made for each other. For him, Mr. Liu radiated confidence. He thinks Sabrina will find happiness with Lawrence. Try to convince yourself that this could, in fact, be for the best. He accidentally brushes the hot plate, and as the heat hits, he yanks his hand back. Sandy calls him clumsy, reminding him that the boss had warned the food was freshly prepared. She tells him to stay still while she handles the wound herself, and she pours a little water. She pours more water over his hand. "It's nothing serious," Sandy says, urging him to act like an adult. Howard just thanks her. Their coworkers shower the department's new couple with congratulations, but he tries to explain it isn't what it seems. From a distance, Sabrina watches the scene, and Lawrence catches the expression on her face. Three men walk up, noting how much the two of them seem to be enjoying themselves. One of them explains he heard Miss Lua was moving to the marketing department and wanted to congratulate her, but now he's curious to find out what's really going on. He turns to the couple and asks why Mr. Lawrence's partner is dancing with another man. From his own table, Howard wonders who that guy might be. Sandy introduces himself as Hans, the general manager of Agwell Capital, and says that Lawrence holds him in high regard. Murmuring, Howard comments that the situation feels awkward and he's unsure which side to take. Lawrence tells Hans not to overreact, saying it's just a dance to keep the party going. Sabrina thanks him for coming, but reminds him that this is an internal company event. Hans looks visibly surprised. She proposes he drop by her office the next day, but for now it's best he leaves. He stresses there's no rush, says it's all a misunderstanding, and that he can easily join the celebration. Sabrina, Hans turns and asks her to dance, but Lawrence stops him. He begins to speak, explaining that he's an old friend of Sabrina's and questions whether it's proper to ask a woman he doesn't know to dance. Hans tells Lua not to worry and says it's not his business to look after her. Lawrence, on the other hand, is less silent. Sandy notes the tension mounting and worries it could turn into a fight. At that point, Sabrina steps in, telling Lua that Hans is a business partner and he praises her composure. Hans reaches out and invites her to dance. She looks at him for a moment before accepting. At the table, Sandy mutters that his meddling is unpleasant, while they dance. Hans says he'll be the one to pick her up for her meeting with Lawrence. Sabrina simply thanks him. He replies that the pleasure is all his and holds her inappropriately. She pushes him away, telling him to stay at a distance, and Hans apologizes, promising not to do it again. Lawrence watches the two from the dance floor. Sandy says Mr. Lua must be furious, but he can do nothing because his company is inferior. Lawrence's. Howard takes a sip of his drink, watching the scene intently, then leaves her disrespectfully. Right away, she warns him with a firm gesture, saying Hans doesn't seem to be a good dancer. He urges them to halt, but he insists he's only just getting started. Sandy says Mr. Lua is being too. She stays passive, telling Howard to stop staring. He grips his wine glass and Hans criticizes her for publicly humiliating him. With a sudden twist, she is thrown off balance, causing her to stumble. He stumbles backward. Lawrence turns to face him, and Howard realizes he was wrong about Mr. Lua. A determined look settles over his face. A stake flies through the air toward him. It lands square in his face. Screaming in pain, he shouts that he's burned. While his coworkers rush to help him, Sabrina lies on the floor. The guests notice Miss Lua's condition and the man orders silence, insisting everyone stay still. He then directs his two subordinates to find out who threw the stake. One approaches Howard's table, giving him a suspicious look before reporting that he found nothing. Howard quietly thanks him, recalling that Sandy had given him half her stake, saving him from discovery. She shrugs it off, calling his act brave, more daring even than Mr. Liu. The other officer likewise reports nothing found and asks what they should do next. Hans taps his forehead, wondering if the stake had fallen from the sky and insisting that no one leave until the culprit is found. With a swift motion, Sabrina slaps him across the face. Hans drops to the floor while his men scramble to lift him. Holding her dress strap, she orders him to take his men and leave, declaring she can't stand him any longer. The guests stare in silence. Howard is stunned by Sabrina's ferocity and relieved she hadn't acted that way in his dream. As he's restrained, Hans yells, questioning how she could dare hit him. Lauren steps up beside her, telling him that politeness doesn't give him the right to disrespect her and threatening to call the police. One of the men tries to calm his boss, who simply grumbles. Then a subordinate leans in and whispers something into his ear. Hans declares no need to call the police, waves goodbye to Miss Lua, and leaves with his men. Lauren wonders about the sudden exit, but Sabrina just says she'll be changing. Howard watches them walk away and thinks the party is finally over, at least for tonight. The night is still far from over. He turns to Sandy and asks what's wrong. She tells him to call her by her first name, points at the table full of bottles, and comments that they've ordered way too much to drink. She realizes she's met a man more charming than Mr. Liu and vows to win him over tonight. Howard tells her to hold off, blaming the hands for killing the mood, but admits he's not. He's a good drinker. Despair surges as he realizes he only has $400 on his card and his salary today. He comes only next week. Realizing he's a tough nut to crack, she decides to prep for the challenge. Sandy then suggests that for every 3 glasses she drinks, Howard must have one, and he agrees. She was determined to get her drunk as fast as possible, with less food and more beer. The clock rang. At 1 in the morning, he tries to rouse Sandy, who is completely knocked out, holding her in his arms. He asks where she lives. Drunk, she abruptly rises and shouts that she lives in the far western desert. She burps right away, and Howard cautions her to watch her step. But she loses her footing and collapses straight on top of him. Yelling, he shouts, "Get off." They said it was inappropriate and everyone was watching, yet she kept stepping forward. She keeps coming non-stop. Just then, a waiter tells them the restaurant is about to close. She hands him the bill. Howard grabs the small slip and stares at the final amount. The amount is exactly $400. Later, the two arrive at an apartment building. Howard helps her climb a dim staircase, and she asks where he's taking her. He says it's his place and that she can spend the night there. Sandy calls him a naughty boy for bringing her home on the first day they met. Howard explains he can't afford a hotel and urges her to tell him where she lives, but she refuses. A bearded figure steps out of the shadows. Howard gently lays her on the bed. As she lies there, she asks him to hold her, but he only tells her to sleep. The fear of becoming the topic of gossip in her new department keeps him uneasy. Sandy says she's feeling sick and dizzy. She has to win him over before she collapses. Dragging herself onto the bed, she pulls closer. Sitting on the edge, the girl turns to him and asks, "Who do you want now?" She leans in close to his face. Howard asks what she's doing as she throws herself onto him, and Sandy replies that she's going to win him over first. Sitting up, she says she wants to see how long he can resist. He covers his mouth, exclaiming that this is exciting. Sandy leans back, commenting on how hot it is inside. Howard snags her wrist and tells her to stop, warning that this could end in disaster. She nods, assuming he's feeling the heat too, but he denies it. Suddenly, she unfastens. Whispering in his ear, she tells him not to be afraid. Then she pushes him, changing the whole situation. Howard feels himself about to give in, and suddenly he starts snoring. Glancing at her, he wonders if he's already fallen asleep. Suddenly, Sandy belches a sharp beer smell straight into his face. He scrambles to a corner as she collapses onto the floor. Covering his mouth, he says the belch knocked him completely sober. Sandy lies on the bed, wrapped in a sheet. Seeing it's already 2 in the morning, he decides to sleep on the sofa. The night drifts on beneath a moonlit glow. The bedroom door creaks open slowly. Howard was still half asleep on the sofa when he suddenly jolts awake. A man slips into the room, heads straight for Sandy, and watches her for a beat before murmuring that she's beautiful. Howard snaps to attention, demanding how the intruder got in. The man, unfazed, says he's had enough fun. Shocked, Howard calls it absurd and starts yelling. Just as the intruder tries to escape, a hand grabs him from behind. The man hurls him hard. When he gets up, he remarks that Howard is tough and that they could have spoken peacefully. As he approaches her, he says he owes her one and asks her to let him know if she needs help later. He goes on to promise he'll give him money once he's rich, and swears he's never touched a woman. 20 years later, he holds the object, turns to Howard, and says that as men, they truly understand each other. He hurls the clothes toward Howard's face, and with his hand over his own face, Howard calls out to him. He snatches a stool and lunges at the intruder, but the man effortlessly shatters it with a single strike. Punch, declaring it a bargain, the intruder claims everyone would die for a favor from him. With a sarcastic grin, Howard boasts that he's the best, yet he reminds himself that the police can still arrest him. The man feels uneasy, as Howard accuses him of breaking into his house and attempting something illegal. Grabbing him, the man remarks that the situation feels odd and asks about the girl. She isn't a woman, and Howard retorts, "Does she look like one?" Incredulous, the invader asks whether people sleep together on the first day, and the young man. He demands an explanation. He says he spent 20 years abroad and doesn't know how dating works today. Howard, skeptical, asks why he stayed at the door instead of going home. Admitting the truth, the man explains that this was his apartment 20 years ago and that he had returned to retrieve things he'd hidden. Moving toward a corner of the room, he points out that the items were tucked away there. He holds up a small box, noting that it had remained hidden for 20 years. Inside, he reveals a watch, some pearls, and other trinkets. He says he risked his life for the items, adding that in the past, anyone who wanted his gold ring had to grab it by mouth. Howard says he doesn't care about his past and wants to know how he'll make up for hurting his colleague. But the man swears it was all a misunderstanding. Introducing himself as Josh Tai, he insists he's not a bully. He tells Howard to dress as a colleague and then announces he's leaving. Still, Howard says he should call the police, reminding him that soliciting services like that is a crime. He threatens him, saying the girl could easily accuse him of being the real attacker. He hands Howard a small box, begging him to forget what happened. Howard refuses the bribe. Josh says it has no material worth, just a plain iron ring, though it is unique. He confesses that ever since he found it, he's been dreaming again and again of the same woman. In his dreams, the woman wore a red coat and carried a golden scepter. Josh laments that she never accepted him, wondering if she was a ghost haunting him. When he turns, Howard sees that the description fits AI 63 exactly. As he walks away, Josh says he's free to use the ring or sell it for a hefty price to the right buyer. Still uncertain, Howard asks if that isn't just a bribe. Josh departs without answering and slams the door behind him. Holding the box, Howard wonders if it's tied to the dream system and decides to open it. Inside, a glistening ring gleams. Suddenly, the ring's jewel emits a signal. Soon, a projection rises from the object, leaving Howard surprised. She immediately tells him he's fallen into a trap. Then the developer explains that the system can blur the lines between social classes, laws, and moral standards. The user barely. They notice their mind shifting little by little. When they return to real life, the difference between dreams and reality awaken the greed and impulses sleeping in their souls. She says that the other developers are just playing with people's lives, and she failed to get them to fix it. The woman urges him to stay alert to the changes inside himself and to resist letting his impulses take over. She seizes control, revealing that a communication device was hidden in every challenge to guide him out, and she urges him to find her. Immediately after, the projection fades and the ring emits its final signal. And won't commit any inappropriate acts. 2 decades ago, he saw AI 63, and now he wonders if the ring is the system's terminal. Suddenly, the cell phone on the bed starts to ring. The alarm indicates 7 in the morning. Grabbing the phone, Howard is startled to realize the day has already begun. Beside him, Sandy wakes up with a soft yawn. Sitting up in bed, Sandy runs her hand through her hair. Suddenly, a scream echoes through the building. Sometime later, Howard and Sandy are walking down the street, arm in arm. The vendor explains that he finally sees why he turned down the offer, and because they find the couple so endearing, breakfast will be on the house. With a shy smile, Sandy confesses she didn't know Howard had a crush on her and apologizes for not noticing sooner. He sits quietly, wondering why this is happening. Soon, they arrive at the magnificent, capacity-limited building. They enter the office while their colleagues comment on the scene, laughing. The two men realize that the former group leader had once been attracted to her and feel sorry for him. From the other side of the room, that same former leader watches the scene, irritated by the sight of Howard. The elevator stops at the first floor. As they step out, Sandy invites him to catch a romance movie together. Howard realizes he'll need to borrow money from Donald to cover the date. The whirlwind of events leaves him speechless. At that moment, Sabrina walks down the hallway. The couple greets her with a bright good morning, and she chuckles, noting how far they've progressed together. Sandy apologizes for any awkwardness. Sabrina gazes at him, taken aback by how swiftly he moved. The air of the moment pulls him into a whirl of uncertainty. Quickly, Sandy remarks that he seemed like a reserved gentleman, which is why she felt at ease with him the night before. Howard presses a hand over her mouth and tells her she needn't elaborate. Sabrina tightens her fist, masking her reaction. She turns to the side, draws a deep breath, and finally looks the couple in the eye before speaking. She's happy for them, but asks them to keep it discreet at work so as not to affect the. Sabrina slowly backs away, leaving the others alone in the hallway, her expression tinged with annoyance. Sandy says Miss Lua was the worst, questioning whether she had the right to lecture them on relationships. Howard objects, insisting she's right and that they should focus on their work. Instantly, Sandy releases. She scolds him, reminding him that she's his girlfriend now and that he should defend her. She continues, insisting he must support her without hesitation, and asks whether he has ever considered. They decide to start a family together. He repeats the word family, puzzled. Soon after, Howard agrees. She concedes she's right and admits he should put their relationship first. Sandy embraces him and says she'll wait for him on the ground floor after work, and as she embraces him, she gazes up close at him. He keeps his eyes on her, holding her hand in a gentle return gesture. Once inside the elevator, she comments. She wishes he'd be a bit more decisive. The day drifts on in the office. Lauren steps in. Sabrina confesses that she's overworking, yet he counters, saying he doesn't believe she's that busy. She can't even grab a lunch, and Sabrina says she isn't hungry because there's too much to do today. She rolled out a new department. Lauren shot back that since they'd been friends for years, he could spot her lies. He then offered that the true culprit was anxiety. Slapping his hand against her desk, he snagged her attention. "Is Howard the cause of this restlessness?" he asked. Sabrina stared at him in silence before calmly replying, "I have no idea what you're talking about." At that moment, a knock at the door. Howard steps in and tells Mr. Liu he's organized the list. Lauren asks him to step closer and show his work. The woman watches their exchange closely, noting every detail. After reviewing the papers, Lauren praises the clear layout and concise content. Howard pulls back from his desk, feeling Sabrina's gaze on him. Soon Lauren asks why he's looking down and what he's thinking about. He replies that everything's fine and he was just. Glancing at the potted plant, Howard notices a small sprout that grabs his attention. His heart starts to pound. Curiously, he blurted out, "Is that a tomato plant?" The atmosphere in the office shifts. The air is tense as the three of them stare at each other. Sabrina notes that he seems to know a lot about tomatoes, and he replies that he knows them by heart. Suddenly, a dream-like memory surfaces. She scrambles for the final tomato to survive, then asks him if he's ever seen plants like those elsewhere. Howard simply nods, pausing before he answers again. A recollection of Mr. Wang surfaces, speaking of men who dilute themselves with unattainable women. Suddenly, AI-63 flashes before him, proclaiming the game over. The developer's voice rings out, warning him to watch for changes within himself and resist being ruled by impulses. Soon, Sandy's image materializes in his mind, reminding him she's his girlfriend now. Finally, the image of Sabrina in the snow swallows him, heart racing. He pauses a moment before speaking. Then, he says he's seen tomato plants like those in his hometown. Lauren laments that he had expected a more shocking secret, but Howard reminds him that tomatoes don't hide secrets. The boss then turns to Sabrina and asks why she's cultivating them in the office. She looks down for a moment, a shadow briefly obscuring part of her face. With a gentle smile, Sabrina admits she must have planted the wrong seeds and vows to switch the pot tomorrow. Lauren asks if that's all, and Howard confirms it is. Later, a faucet drips in the bathroom. Howard. He splashes water on his face to steady himself, relieved when he finally recognizes the real Sabrina. She differs from the one in his dream, yet he still can't shake her from his mind. In her office, Sabrina works alone, concentrating at her desk. She exhales a sigh of relief for having. She kept her composure and steered clear of embarrassment. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Howard realizes the game's developer was right. He'd slipped into a trap without even noticing. Looking at him. In his own reflection, he wonders what kind of man he would have become had he stayed in the game. He reminds himself that he's just an employee, she's the president's daughter, and concludes that nothing else matters. Will ever happen between them? Back in her office, Sabrina reflects on how real the dream felt. During the 180 days they face trials together, she holds the pot with a small plant and decides it's time to let the past slip away. Both arrive at the same understanding. The dream ends and their connection dissolves. The workday at Grand Glory Limited finally winds down. Howard turns to Donald for help moving 2,000 comments, explaining that his expenses have spiked since he started dating. Outside the building, Sandy waits for him. To lift her spirits, Howard decides to take her out to dinner. Suddenly, the former group leader appears to talk to her. He worries that Sandy might be falling for a scam, but she brushes him off, saying she doesn't need to hear it. Howard arrives, gives her a hug, and asks what happened. He wants to know if the man tried to touch her, but she denies it. The ex-leader explains that, unlike some others, he's honest and simply wanted to warn her about hypocrites. After saying what he needed to, he turns and walks away. Howard tells her to just ignore him, reminding her that he was always a nuisance in the advertising department. Holding her hand, Howard reminds her they were still going to the movies and shopping. Her hand gently slips away from his. The two remain side by side, watching the sunset paint the sky. Suddenly, Sandy declares that she wants to break up. He keeps staring out toward the horizon, refusing to look at her. She points out that they barely know each other and asks about his family's debt. Howard quietly lowers his head. With a faint smile, he admits the sum is $200,000, a figure that shocks her. It's far beyond what someone living on a single salary could afford. He asks her to keep this out of their conversation. Sandy admits she doesn't come from wealth and isn't as capable as Howard had imagined. Howard concedes that she never truly cared for him. She tells him she resented watching Miss Lua draw all the suitors, and unknowingly she got entangled. Finally, she says she doesn't deserve him and asks him to let last night slide. After their talk, Sandy walks away, leaving him standing alone before the building. Later, in a text exchange, Howard turns down Donald's extra payment offer. Mr. Lua approaches Sion's desk and starts a conversation. He tells her the issue concerns Chen Shu and keeps speaking. He explains he had given the young man a week's worth of work, which the student finished in one day with outstanding results. Admitting he misread her, he acknowledges that she was merely testing Chen Shu's extraordinary talent. Listening in silence, Sion keeps a firm expression as he questions the idea of something complicated. In their relationship, she warns the manager not to act as if he knows her, reminding him that she has replaced him. Secretaries for less. As she steps through the door, Sandy Dyes tells Manager Lua that his driver is Waiting, he confirms he's on his way. Watching the secretary, Zion thinks that woman isn't good. Intentions. As he turns to leave, Mr. Lua reminds her of their pact to keep out of each other's business. Personal matters. Everyone curses. Howard Chen scolds himself, regretting that he let himself be swayed by the. He hears the words. A call comes offering quick money, and he asks if it's real. Sandy Dyes introduces her friends, explaining they'll help with the live stream and aim to do. An unprecedented sight. Howard Chen was puzzled, asking why they were dressed that way. After noting that streams rely on visual effects to draw an audience, they hear him ask whether he also has to wear clothes like that. A woman confirmed that he must wear the prepared outfit. He says his role will be to shoot arrows, and he announced that they've already reached 200,000 fans. Sandy comments on that night's earnings, learning that the payout hinges on his skill. Howard Chen vows to do his best. As he moves toward the group, a woman asks Zixin why she's bringing that person on board. Zixin explains that the club's style is to ignite fan excitement, and she listens. Sandy Dyes proposes they try something new this time, but a firm woman cuts in, reminding them that the stream isn't only for them and that profiting from foolishness isn't fun. She proposes they take extreme steps for popularity, arguing that Howard knows nothing and they have nothing to lose. While the group talks, Howard Chen stays attentive. Slowly drawing near, a figure appears, boots flashing with spiky details. The three women stare straight ahead, their attention fixed. As he slips into the new outfit, he mutters that if his mother saw him, she'd surely disapprove. While praising the effect as incredible and noting it will energize the audience, Zixin asks about the mask. When he says he'd feel a little embarrassed, the other woman smiles. She explains that he simply doesn't want to be recognized by people in his daily life. Turning to Howard Chen, Sandy Dyes tells him the game has shifted and that she needs him to add some parts later. She reminds everyone that the audience will enjoy a performance more than merely watching him shoot arrows, underscoring that this is a job. Preparing for the stream, Sandy and Howard Chen take a deep breath together. She reassures the young man, promising to help him in any way she can and urging him to do his part as much as possible. With that agreement, Howard Chen says it's time to begin. When the phone recording began, a hand lifted. Welcoming everyone, the two women announced they'd unveil something new, revealing a new challenge had been set, and one raised her chin. She gestured and she explains that the goal is to shoot an arrow straight into the middle of the mat. Pointing at the target, the woman warns that if the arrow misses, an alarm will sound, ending the challenge. She suggests a demo of the alarm system and sets up the test. Zixin deliberately shoots wide of the target. The alarm blares instantly, showing what will happen. Announcing that it's time to meet the rookie challenger, the other woman points toward the camera. Stepping onto the stage, Howard Chen appears before the audience, clutching 10 arrows as he readies himself for. During the challenge, the hosts encourage the audience to send gifts to support him. During the stream, Sandy Dyes celebrates the audience growth by lowering the difficulty level. When halted, the other woman grips her wrist tightly, wondering what she'll do next. In a studio that underestimates its audience, the woman steps up the pressure, replying that it might. Sandy Dyes wondered whether she should embarrass Howard Chen and make the audience drop. She yells that paying viewers expect to see challenges, and her patience snaps. Turning to Howard Chen, she tells him he can't expect to earn money without effort. She warns him to quit if he doesn't want to participate, insisting he shouldn't have started in the first place. Launching an arrow toward the target, Howard Chen begins the test. Hitting the bull's eye flawlessly, he showcases his skill. Turning around, he asks who said he didn't want to do it. Staring at him firmly, the woman declares she wants something different. After a strong start, the challenger announces she will increase the distance of the challenge. Sandy Dai steps in, noting that the international championship allows only a 2-meter span, but Yao Peng shouts that this is her own show. Pointing at Howard Chen, Yao Peng claims he did it alone. He fires 3 arrows at once, each one striking the bullseye. Witnessing the feat, Yao Peng declares him incredible. Still astonished, she comments again as another arrow hits the target. Noticing the surge in viewers, 2 women exchange glances, praising his composure. The stream hails him as the embodiment of a real man. Seeing she has to act, Yao Peng observes that he continues to hit the target perfectly. She tells the crowd that he's already hit 6 straight shots from twice the championship distance, and she tries to regain control. He keeps moving farther away, stepping back while she yells that the gap is widening. With her 6th straight hit, she lifts her arms to the cameras and tells them the audience is growing and going viral. Zixin sets a tense mood. Yao Peng yells, demanding they keep going. She announces the 7th hit on the target, though her enthusiasm feels forced. Yao Peng turns to Howard Chen and asks why he's dropping the arrows. The studio had already expected him to flop, and he admits he doesn't enjoy acting, calling his last 3 takes misses, while he questions why people relish his failures. Instead of reveling in his success, he confronts the cameras, realizing he may not be cut out for it. For this venture, he bids farewell to his current look in every upcoming live stream. He turns around. Howard Chen walks through the door and exits the studio, commenting that it's over and it'll be. It's hard to find something that goes viral again, so Zixin wonders whether the sudden disappearance of comments is a bug. She apologizes, realizing he had blamed her for her attitude before the broadcast. Zixin and Sandy Day glance at their phones, puzzled by what just happened. In his room, Howard Chen answers the call, asking who it is, and wonders if his secret has been revealed. He works to stay calm, then reflects on his appearance from last night, realizing it was all for show. When he rises, he sees a breakfast spread of black rice porridge and several side dishes on the table. The older man explains it's his favorite and that more will arrive, then shifts the tray. He jokes that at this rate he'll earn the nickname Black Food Bro, and Howard laughs at the unappealing fare. Surprised by the reaction, the man hears the young man say there's no need to open a restaurant just yet, since the plan is to launch in 2 days. He admits he's still undecided and invites the man to stay with him for now, pointing out that he can eat and sleep there instead of wandering aimlessly. Later, as they approach the company building, Howard Chen takes a deep breath. At the entrance, he's stunned to find the 3 women from the live stream greeting him. They beg for a moment's chat, but he declines, citing work, and waves goodbye. He flees, wishing he'd stayed home if he'd known they'd be there. Back at the office, a colleague rushes over to say Mr. Liu wants to see him immediately. He pulls out his phone and shows that Shishiro has gone viral and that President Liu is keenly interested. On the screen, clips from last night's stream play, revealing the whole situation. Seeing his own image suddenly blow up on Keeling's site, Howard Chen turns pale. The colleague explains that the site rose to fame because of the 7 hits, noting the young man's despair. Upon entering Director Liu's office, Howard asks if the man had been looking for him and why his path had been blocked. Liu questions him about the stream and wonders why it wasn't caught on camera with Dai Zixin. The director strides over, complimenting Keeling's site, and Howard steps back. He presses for that person's contact number for a collaboration, but Howard flat out refuses, saying he doesn't have it and that the request feels off-putting. Howard then attempts to steer the conversation to another topic. When he says he lacks good taste, Mr. Liu points out that Keeling has become a public idol, describing the image of a cold, solitary figure, proclaiming a firm stance and speaking about the last 3 throws. His actions left everyone trembling. The director, insisting on getting the contact number, claimed that's the way it works. Everything is running smoothly, yet Howard insists he's not to blame. Mr. Liu extends a promotion to assistant. He promises a salary increase through benefits. By pledging to find someone, Howard thinks that being Keelang was perfect because he could simply appear without showing his face, while sitting elsewhere. Zixin says Chen Shu finally dislikes them and thinks it's best to hold off for now. When Howard's Sandy Dye arrives, he announces that he has something to say. She rushes toward them, losing her composure. Grabbing Howard Chen's tie, she stares at him. Shouting that she didn't want to be like this, Jiao Pang admits that nobody noticed her. She updated her workout videos, deciding to change her approach to grab attention. Hearing this, Zixin says. His words made her realize that her initial goal had simply been to highlight how hard it is to earn money. But everything changed. With her hands clasped, she began to plead. Kneeling, Jiao Pang vows to stop so as to avoid further embarrassment, yet she asks for help to make money. Howard Chen shakes her hand, agrees to the request, and leaves the three women satisfied. A month later, a screen notification announces that the Dream Games will open tomorrow. Asked about the early opening, Howard Chen admits he no longer feels drawn to it. As he readies himself, he dons his Keelang costume once more. Cheered by a crowd on stage, Keelang declares that living in the real world isn't all that interesting. Noticing the hungry fans, Keelang asks who still hasn't eaten, prompting a man in the audience to raise his hand. Holding a small cake, Sandy Dye asks what he'd like. Offering to take care of it, she says she'll buy a cake for the fan. The audience immediately explodes with enthusiasm. A cake flies straight ahead and lands in a man's face. Keelang approaches and asks if he accepts the gift and if it's good. Still covered in cake, a fan stands motionless while another man watches beside him. Shouting in support, the dirty-faced man and the rest of the crowd begin cheering for Keelang. In the audience, Zaeun remarks that it's strange and she can't see what's so great about it. Beside her, Mr. Liu tells her that all this passion is merely a way to make money. During the announcement of the next segment, Xiao Pang reveals that the event will toss a red scarf to crown a new partner of Keelang. Mr. Liu leaps from his seat, shouting that he wants to be chosen, but Zaeun pulls him back, warning him not to overdo it. The scarf flies through the air and lands on her head. When the men see Dai-un covered in it, they all pause, someone calls out, and a scramble begins as the men rush to snatch the scarf from her. Celebrating his win, Mr. Liu holds up the scarf. While Zaeun maintains that she isn't fond of Keelang, Mr. Liu whispers backstage that Chen Xiu is still gone after a bathroom break, yet Keelang insists he's already issued instructions. Holding a scarf, Mr. Liu claims it struck him on the head, prompting Keelang to ask if that's true. Keelang explains that he won't sign a contract, but is willing to review offers for using his likeness. Watching quietly, Zaeun observes her boss's puzzled expression. As he ponders the situation, Howard Chen concludes that Mr. Liu. He doesn't come across as a gentle soul. Another man steps up, suggesting that, since he's famous, Keelang should have chosen the Jiang Feng group, yet it rejected the offer. Keelang listens, while the man admits he hasn't met the group yet. When asked how much Mr. Liu offered, he promised to increase the proposal fivefold. Watching the scene unfold, Zaeun considers the Jiang Feng group's tactic of placing hefty bids, too. Aiming for bigger gains, Keelang tells Chief Zhu that his refusal isn't about. The money confuses him, and he bluntly says it's because he doesn't like him. After the speech concluded, the man stood frozen while Mr. Liu and Zaeun tried not to laugh. As Keelang. He departs and hears Chief Zhu shouting that he will regret it. Meanwhile, Mr. Liu comments on the artist. It's rather intriguing. Nodding silently, Zaeun concedes that her impression of him has shifted. The older man asks Howard Chen whether he actually has the money to start the business. Sitting on the sofa, he discovers he must pay 3 months, rent as soon as the money arrives. But Howard reassures him, holding up a card and saying it should be enough. Explaining where the money came from, He says his family began saving in that account when he was just 1 year old. Even through hardships, his parents kept putting money aside for him until he turned 18. He remembers his father handing him the card and urging him to forge his own path. Even though the money matters a great deal, he affirms that his decision to open a restaurant hasn't changed. Inquiring about the situation, he wants to know what the man is ready for. He replies firmly that he can't do it, leaving Howard surprised. Sadly, he says it's too late. He's already found another job. Far from the scene, Chief Zhu learns from a photo that Qilang is really Chen Shu. He demands immediate action and orders Demao to call one of his contacts. A man in the room casually mentions he recently gave him an advance to handle a sensitive matter. Chief Zhu studies the image of Chen Shu and Sandy Dai in silence, then declares his conclusion. This is what happens when they try to cross him. As he sinks into the water, Howard's consciousness drifts among bubbles, spiraling toward the bottom. Weakened, he wonders if this is the end. 15 hours earlier, the scene refocuses on Howard Chen. 15 hours before the incident, the focus is on Howard Chen. An elderly woman suddenly appears at the door. From the car, a voice asks him what he's waiting for. He steps into the vehicle, apologizes, and explains that an old woman had knocked, looking for someone. Mr. Liu asks if he knew the person the woman was looking for. Calmly, Howard Chen explains it was a friend from the boarding house who had moved out the previous night. Mr. Liu suggests he move closer to the company, but Howard says he'll think about it. Mr. Liu thanked him for setting up the meeting and noted that, despite production falling short of expectations, he was pleased with Mr. Zhao's reaction. He then introduced his team, including the driver and secretary. Howard Chen will be seeing them frequently. The two in the front seat greet him immediately. Back to the gesture, Howard Chen urges everyone to cooperate going forward. Mr. Liu warns. He tells him he'll frequently confront tough, shrewd clients. He notes success will arrive only once they earn their trust. Holding a cat, a woman asks if anyone has complaints. The other women in the room falls silent as Mr. Liu and Howard Chen arrive, and Mr. Liu apologizes for the delay. Sandy turns instantly, calling Howard Chen's name. Another woman steps forward to confront them. Mr. Liu asks why Howard Chen is in the room. He explains he forgot to say Howard would be his new assistant and begins the introduction. With a formal tone, Mr. Liu presents Howard to Jiangxia, the CEO of Fangdong Group. Howard extends his hand to greet Ms. Jiangxia. He freezes, unsure how to react. When he asks the cat if it's hungry, Jiangxia completely ignores both men. She ends the chat by telling them to put business aside for their break. Walking away calmly, she says she can't wait to hit the hot spring, leaving Howard Chen bewildered. Mr. Liu urges him to calm down, saying that's just how she is. He explains the situation. Fangdong Group owns China's largest e-commerce platform, but any attempt to artificially inflate its market price would ruin it. He notes that Zion is betting the headquarters can pull it off, which is why there's no time to waste. He lays out the risk clearly. If the company's profitability misses this week's target, she may never see him again. The word bet catches Howard Chen's attention and sparks his thoughts. In her room, Sabrina Luoz says she did it to break free from the ties that forced the little girl onto the red trail, but she feels she can't choose. A man strolling past the office slips a casual remark. Howard Chen, silently, wonders whether this is the bet Sabrina Luoz is making for her spot and what the red thread denotes. Mr. Liu tells Sabrina Luoz they need to speak to Ms. Jiangxia again, but she asks what else must be discussed. Jiangxia says she has a request she hopes will solve the problem. She explains that only her group can push products quickly across the country, and Mr. Liu reminds them that only 3 days remain for the bet. After dismissing her assistants, Sabrina Luoz tells them they can go back to their room. A man steps forward to greet the group. He remarks that the farewell party feels festive and promises to escort Ms. Luoz safely to Dufeng. Howard Chen watches, studying the visitor. Mr. Liu demands to know why the deadline was moved up by 3 days. The man explains that Sabrina Luo's father had never informed them. He adds that she will meet Chief Du Feng tomorrow to discuss marriage and a partnership, heightening the tension. Sabrina Luo's decides to delay the discussion until the following day, citing the team's vacation as the reason. She struggles to grasp the logic, wondering how a marriage could be part of a deal, and then accuses him. About the lie, Mr. Liu says everyone knew the group's finances were in jeopardy. Realizing the parent company is confronting an even graver issue, Howard Chen decides to. She examined the data he had, using her intellect to prove her value to her father. Sabrina Luo's throws everything on the line. If she loses this bet, she'll be forced to marry Du Feng to save the company. Howard Chen is skeptical since she has never met the man. Mr. Liu responds in disbelief. He's about to call to confirm, but Sabrina Luo's cuts him off, calling it pointless. Her father has always. She'd already known. Repeating to herself that he'd always been like this, she tries to grasp the moment. A memory surfaces, a little girl behind bars. This has become her reason for living. The scene shows a masked man, free to command his own fate, revealing the power behind the figure. He sits outside the room where the girl is kept, his second mask tucked behind his neck, watching in silence. Mr. Liu tells Howard Chen to go back to his room and wait, saying that Sabrina needs some rest. The other man laughs scornfully as they walk away. He tells her that she's now forced to marry Mr. Du Feng and that it's finally time to help the old man. Turning to Howard, he remarks that a woman like hers truly deserves this kind of treatment. The man tells him to mind his own business and sort out his own problems. Howard Chen receives a call. He asks what happened. The caller explains they were confronted by a powerful group and have been labeled an adversary organization. A woman in an office warns him not to involve the authorities, saying it could jeopardize the caller's career. Howard ends the call with a thank you. He's been told he will meet Zixin to go over precautions. As the man points at him, the tension in the room spikes. Calling him T-Lang, the man says that was only the appetizer. Then he turns and warns him of the consequences of confronting him. Alone by the pool, Howard Chen tries to figure out what to do next. He wonders that since Mr. Zhao now knows he's T-Lang, what kind of revenge he might pursue. With no guidance from the studio, he realizes that both CEO Liu and Director Liu are wrestling with their own issues. Memories of Sabrina Liu and Mr. Zhao rush back, filling him with unease. Seeing he can't count on Chief Liu, Howard decides his only ally will be CEO Jay Anxia. Turning spots a hooded figure approaching. He asks Lin Kawa if he's there, trying to grasp this new threat. The man makes his purpose clear. He's been paid to neutralize a specific target. He readies himself for a fight, apologizes to Howard Chen, and announces his decision. Back in the opening scene, Howard sinks into the water, accepting his fate. A hand reaches into it, and the narrative tone shifts. A message announces that the character has been created, redefining everything around him. Welcome to the second dream. The Beast Invasion and AI voice, AI-63, greet him. Howard Chen asks why he's still alive and what he's doing here, trying to make sense of the situation. The AI replies that players don't enter the game. The program triggers when they're defeated, asking if he's facing real-world issues again today, recalling a recent incident. Howard's memories resurface as he relives the event. A hooded man tells him he'll be spared this time, but that he must head to the hospital to recover. While lying on the ground, Howard is warned that if he does, leaving the city would put his colleagues, friends, and family in danger. He wonders why he must face such peril. Facing countless obstacles on his journey to success, he bears their weight. A hooded man glares at him. He grasps the warning's seriousness. Back in the room, Howard stands before a huge door. Stadinger isn't turning back. He says he'll fit in some practice while he rests. AI-63 warns that the beast's attack is extremely tough, and he'll be defeated without the provided aid. She tries to persuade him, but Howard insists he doesn't need the items. He declares his intention. He practices his fighting skills in the dream game again, hunting for a new strategy. He steals his. He made a firm declaration. Those who interfere in his life will face the consequences. Walking toward the door, he embraces the challenge. The system launches the virtual dream game. Beast attack. Soldiers must survive, explore, fight, and escape. They have 160 days before the world ends. Wondering about the game's difficulty, Howard notes he's been issued a vest and a gun. A drip on his helmet catches his attention. Something's wrong. He looks up, and a sense of looming danger fills him. A giant monster dominates the scene, viciously attacking something. From above, it turns to face him, fixing him with predatory eyes. A piece of debris falls near his foot, striking the ground. Facing the creature, Howard gauges the distance. The monster throws a punch, but he dodges and calls it King Kong. He darts into a building, just as the creature's fist shatters the wall. The structure crumbles behind him, exposing the beast's immense power. He reaches for his gun. Howard wonders whether he should use it, knowing the creature is tough to defeat and recalling that the man who attacked him is a dangerous foe, so he hesitates. He drops the gun as the monster barrels in from the outside, opting to confront it another way. The creature closes in, snatching a metal pipe from the wreckage. Howard reacts instinctively, setting the pipe firmly on the ground and bracing for the blow. A monster bursts through the entrance, wreaking havoc as it takes over the area, remarking that he was almost hit before he tries to catch his breath. The pipe darts forward, gaining speed, and pierces the wall to strike the creature in a vulnerable spot. The tip hits its target and embeds itself in the creature. The beast staggers back, struggling to keep its footing. It is hurled far away, losing control of its body. Watching the scene unfold, Howard tries to understand what just happened. Leaning on the wreckage, he steadies himself and accepts that his fighting power will grow only slowly as the game progresses. The sound of boots striking the ground ahead snaps him out of his thoughts. He grabs a metal rod and lunges forward, eager to seize the initiative. Suddenly, a woman appears before him, surprising him and forcing him to question her identity. Seeing her, Howard calls out Yang Giantsia's name, but when he senses something off, he hesitates. In a fleeting instant, the rod slices through the air as she drops to the ground, evading the attack. Howard Chen pulls up, asking Yang Giantsia if she's okay. He tells her he thinks he saw a monster. She asks why he's there, insisting he ought to be in the hospital. Confused, Howard asks why. Yang Giantsia recalls what happened, explaining that he stumbled into. She fell into the hot spring in her room, got injured, and called an ambulance for him. Howard connects the dots, realizing that after being hurt, he must have accidentally slipped into her room while searching for help. He realizes that, in reality, he ought to be in a hospital bed, trying to make sense of it all. He says that when he woke up, he was already in the ruins and doesn't know how he got there. Adding that he didn't opt to begin a game or ask for an assistant. Yang Giantsia admits she's in the same predicament, saying she was moved here for no reason and came to see what's going on. Howard thanked her for calling the ambulance, saying he wouldn't have survived without her help. She told him to hold his thanks until they were safe and reminded him that, since he was good at throwing javelins, he could still be of use. Howard paused, asking how he could help. Yang Giantsia pointed toward a sinking city in the distance, drawing his focus there. She asked if the city looked familiar, watching his reaction. Seeing it, Howard was surprised. He noticed their companies building amid the ruins and understood. Yang Giantsia confirms it, speculating they've leapt 300 to 400 years into the future. She notices the wind carries a foul scent, the water looks caustic, and the sea level is steadily climbing, hinting that the land could soon be flooded. Realizing this marks the world's ruin, Howard feels the weight of the revelation. Yang Giantsia tries to share some good news, letting them know they're not the only humans around. Howard cuts in with the bad news. Monsters roam the area and he's seen gorillas attacking people. She asks if he'll join her, offering to act as guide while he provides protection. Howard is surprised, wondering how she's not shaken by the time travel and is already making plans. She replies simply that she just wants to survive, ending the discussion. Together, they walk through the sandy desert, advancing across the harsh terrain. Yang Giantsia asks if Howard used to compete in javelin, and he says no, noting it's just a hobby. Howard comments he didn't expect her to remember him since she barely glanced at him the first time they met. As they climb a mountain, she admits he wasn't very valuable to her then. He retorts that she won't make friends if she keeps judging people by their worth. Upon reaching the summit, Howard says she's a great climber. They spot a fortress-like structure in the distance. Turning to him, Giantsia says you only make friends after you've proven your own worth. Out of nowhere, Howard pulls her back and smothers her mouth with his hand, reacting to an immediate danger. Concealed, they watch a giant centipede slither past. Drawing a gun from his pocket, Howard Chen makes a quick move. Decision made, he hands the gun to Giantsia, saying it may be a letdown, but she should use it too. She promises to guard herself if danger comes. Grateful, she accepts the weapon and offers her help. When danger strikes, Howard peeks over the fortress wall and reports that no monsters are nearby. They can go inside. He notices the floor and building are clean, but it's odd that no one is there. Looking around, Howard spots something and asks, "What is that?" He sees a structure that looks like a military installation. They creep toward the fortress, moving cautiously, and Giantsia notes that the logs on the roof look like an eagle's. He spots a nest, yet thinks no eagle's nest could be this enormous. A soaring creature appears in the sky. Before them, Howard shouts, urging her to back off, trying to warn his companion. A giant eagle soars. Towards them, it violently rose into the sky. A giant eagle circled powerfully above the fortress. Giantsia rushes to tell him to take cover inside, but Howard holds his ground, remaining unresponsive. She calls out his name. He tells her to worry about herself, insisting he'll be fine. Grabbing a dart, he confronts Giantsia's reaction. She calls him crazy, insisting the eagle is huge and the darts won't stop it. He declares that's exactly what he wants and stays focused. A memory flickers into view, a blade thrust straight at him. A hooded figure tells him he can't fight, only tremble at the threat. The man scoffs at the notion of reshaping his fate, insisting anyone could assume his role effortlessly. The figure then announces that Howard won't be his boss. Back in the present, he feels that when the dream ends, only the most vivid memory will linger. Hoping it will show just how fearless and brave he can be, he readies himself for the attack. With his position set, he prepares to launch the darts at the advancing eagle, staring down from above a giant creature. He steadies his aim and releases a volley of darts, sending them flying toward the bird. Each projectile hits the creature squarely, striking it with precise accuracy. Plummeting from the sky, the eagle crashes to the ground as Giantsia watches its descent. A splash of liquid from the creature lands on Howard, reacting instantly and evaporating across his skin. Bending down to his knees, he asks what the green substance is. Giantsia rushes over and warns him not to touch the liquid, saying it's caustic. Howard screams as the substance keeps scorching him, and a light on a nearby structure shifts hue, unlocking a gate. Bursting out of the gap, a small robot announces it has spotted a human in need and activates its emergency medical system. While Giantsia asks who it is, the machine readies the injection. The robot delivers the substance into Howard's back, completing the procedure. While on the ground, Howard hears a warning that the system will shut down due to a lack of power. The robot powers down completely, becoming motionless. Howard collapses as Giantsia calls his name. In the room, Giantsia stays beside the unconscious Howard and the idle machine. She turns to her companion, smiling and remarking that he's as good as new. Confused upon waking, Howard asks where he is and notices his hair feels odd. Giantsia says it's a side effect of the injection. Inside the fortress, she tells him the robot injected him with a potion that miraculously healed him completely. Giantsia watches the machine, suggesting, "Perhaps the robot will explain the history of this place when it wakes up. I'm fully reactivating it now." The robot informs you that it's fully charged and has detected a large, dirty area. The machine. It shuffles across the room while Howard asks where it's headed. The robot lifts its lid, unveiling anew. In the compartment, the machine starts spraying the fallen creature. Howard wonders if the robot will clear up its remains, and Giantsia guesses they need a code to activate it. Seeing the number 2003 on the metal casing, Giantsia marks it down. She says the number out loud and watches the robot turn toward her. After receiving a new order, the machine powers down autopilot and launches its smart program. Its display reports that it has spent 1,130 days on autopilot, survived 363 attacks, and cleared 46,200 tons of waste. Now it needs maintenance. As Howard and Giantsia watch, the robot's eye lights up. It begins to dance, announcing that it had known this day would come and that it had been left behind for not working hard enough. It believes that by keeping the camp clean, humans will finally return. Giantsia asks the robot if that means there are no humans here, and then wonders whether the place stays tidy because it's cleaned every day. The robot confirms its routine, saying that one day humans will return when they see how clean everything is, just like before. For a moment, they stood in silence, simply taking in their surroundings. Giantsia probes again, wondering whether the machine knows where the humans vanished or if they left any clues. The robot explains the last conversation, saying that if they didn't return in a year, it was taken to mean they'd gone to heaven. It asks with curiosity where heaven is, since it can't find it on the map. Howard suggests it's better for the robot to remain unaware. Giantsia concludes that, after 3 years of autopilot, the people are likely gone for good. She instructs the machine to escort them to the storage room. Now is the time to make new plans. Entering the room, Giantsia takes the lead while Howard keeps a wary eye on her. He marvels at how she remains composed and resumes plotting even after all the chaos. A nearby robot projects the humans' weapons, only to warn that they're out of ammo. Pointing to a corner, it points out the compressed energy bars, the last of their food, which the humans described as incredibly hard. Unveiling a new item, the machine displays the Medusa tear potion, used to heal wounds. But overusing it can rust the body. Pointing at himself, Howard asks if that's what the robot. They injected him, and if he's going to turn into a rock, the robot calmly informs him that he is. It's safe thanks to the potion's strong effect, but his hair keeps growing from overmaintenance. Adding another restriction, the machine admits the potion won't heal the nervous system, and that some humans grew disabled by overusing it. Howard imposes limits on the potion. It won't turn him into a martial arts master. The robot tells them that the camp has a reservoir. Prompting Giantsia to ask for a bathroom, it questions its routine, wondering why it hadn't. Recharge at the power center. The robot replies that it can't use human resources without permission. Declaring a machine is merely a machine, she asks it to show them the other areas. The robot stays silent for a moment, unmoved. It guides her forward into a control room dominated by a large panel. She peers at the panel and asks, "What kind of language is this? It looks like scribbles to me." The robot darts in, announcing that it's brought the master's map. It stumbles over a scroll on the floor and loses its balance, falling to the ground while watching the scroll sail across the air. Giantsia asks if it's still working and what is written in the journal. The robot explains that this new language was devised so intelligent animals could understand the stories. The machine admits its limitation, telling them the language isn't registered in its system and it can't read the records. Giantsia snatches the journal, reads it, and her expression shifts. She questions their situation, asking whether they are on an isolated island. But the map shows this is the planet's only remaining landmass. The robot warns that in 179 days, an acid ocean will flood the land, so they must stay in the shelter to stay safe. In short, Giantsia realizes they're out of ammo, food, and rescue. All that's left is to wait for the end. Siam, she faces reality. Pulling her hair back, she asks if the humans left any clothes she could bring to Howard. Upon confirming that clothes are in the rooms, the machine offers to fetch them. Giantsia questions it once more, asking the robot if it knows why humans abandoned it. It asks, hesitantly, whether it was because it hadn't worked hard enough. She stands over the fallen robot, gazing down at it. Coldly, Giantsia explained that it failed to show its worth, and she vowed she didn't want to end up like it. The robot moves alone down the corridor. Howard spots the machine on the bathroom floor and asks what happened. It refuses to be left behind. While trying to clean the floor, the robot insists it can still work and clean. It admits the truth, saying it wants to stay with the humans. The screen glows, pulling up a scene that reminds it how much it misses being around people. It scrolls through other memories, showing bright moments with children and the serenity of nature. In one frame, the machine relives the sight of two children cheering as it repeated its cleaning command. As the image fades, its vision starts to blur, a sign of a slow breakdown. It displays blurry shots of the fortress, wipes itself with a cloth, and pleads that it can still work. Affirming its hope, it admits it doesn't know what heaven is like, but vows to make this place cleaner than heaven itself. While tightening a part, Howard checks the metal's condition. Spotting a flaw, he asks the robot how it was repaired, and the machine replies that human engineers had worked in the maintenance room. Realizing no engineers are present, he decides to give it a try anyway and heads for the door. When he steps into the room, Giantsia appears before him. Howard asks what's brought her in. She tells him not to be shy, warns that the world is about to be destroyed, and hands him a set of newly prepared clothes. Thanking her, he asks her to place the clothes on the table. Emphasizing the gravity of the situation, Giantsia says they're in very bad shape, but she reassures him that they still have a chance to survive. She questions the past, asking why anyone would leave a shelter full of food and a roof over their heads, even risking death. Responding honestly. Howard remembers that Robot 2003 told him they were searching for a place. As she ponders this, she warns that the world will soon collapse, and wherever they were heading, they could not stop it unless something else existed. Listening intently, he clings to every word. If the place they sought could protect them from the impending devastation, Giantsia agrees. Only such a refuge would be worth the effort. Even if it meant dying on the way, she insists the records hold vital information and asks for time to crack the codes, leaving Howard amazed by her determination. Scanning the map, Giantsia warned that the sea level is climbing and that monsters would keep gathering, putting them in danger. Expressing her hope, she says they can keep working as a team until help arrives. Offering her plan, Giantsia says she'll research how to escape while Howard keeps them safe, surprising him with her boldness. He nods, recalling how she had saved his life. Turning to his side, Howard takes a deep breath, wondering if she might be armed. With her, he realizes she does, and asks whether this is a common habit among survivors. When explaining her intention, Giantsia says she thought she might need to use special methods too. She eases his nerves, and now she feels relieved seeing how composed he remains. Building on that, she asserts that in a life or death moment, a mental breakdown would erase any chance of survival. Howard doesn't fully grasp it, so he simply stares at her. Realizing the situation, he finally understands her. He intended to calm him with the gun, recalling a warning that Giantsia was powerful and He realizes that the sharp woman grasps the whole picture before telling the robot it has a task. After leaving the bathroom, he walks away. Alone, Jiangxi thinks Howard is a plain, moral man, a detail that helps her, since she has no time to waste on him. Reporting its status, the robot says it's feeling much better, and its acoustic generator is functioning normally again. Howard questions the machine's behavior, asking why it stayed silent while Jiangxi was with them. The robot replies it can't grasp human subtext. Defining his limits, Howard tells Jiangxi she's free to do anything she wants, so long as it doesn't interfere with his training to confront the creatures. The robot, doubting its mission, asks whether to attack the mutant animals, warning it could be dangerous. Stating he has no other choice, Howard explains that in another world he too endured a time of destruction. As he continues to recall, the mutant creatures there nearly cost him his life. Looking back, Howard realizes the conflict will only end if the waves of destruction fade away. Ventel says he gave up everything for a triumph that someone else effortlessly destroyed. Naively, the machine asks whether the other world is the heaven humanity has gone to, and Howard wonders why it keeps thinking about it. Howard explains that for him, heaven feels like home, a place of safety, loyalty, and warmth. He concludes that if he can rise to this challenge, he will be able to protect that home. As it grasps the concept, the robot says heaven is amazing, and no wonder everyone went there. The machine, offering its help, says it would love to aid him in saving his heaven. Agreeing, Howard says he'll need it to heal him when he gets injured, and asks to be called by his name. To everyone's surprise, the machine reacts, as if only humans address one another by name. On the second day, Jiangxia bites into a hard energy bar while studying the panel. She notes that the welding is characteristic of Howard's style. With its new armor, the robot proves both sturdy and resilient, repeating its command to clean up the mess. Howard Chen asks the robot whether those are the giant bolts it mentioned. He questions why there would be so many in storage, and then explains their use. The robot says that lacking ammo, they used bolts to fend off monsters, yet abandoned the device once the environment worsened. Commenting on how sad the story is, Howard watches everything as Jiangxia does and asks if he's heading out. He confirms, reminding her that the deal was for him to defeat the monsters. Calling it unnecessary, Jiangxia points to records showing 1 million beasts had already been there 3 years ago, and that their duty is to keep the camp safe. Firmly, Howard says he has only 180 days and won't wait for the monsters to find him. She questions his choice, asking why he's stirring trouble for himself. Reflecting on the danger, Jiangxia describes the animal's corrosive fluid and a 2-story tall chimpanzee she saw. She emphasizes the seriousness, saying they can't afford mistakes and must preserve their energy until she finds the sanctuary. Defiantly, Howard confronts her, asking if she's trying to dictate his choices in his own world. He recalls a past moment, lying almost helpless in a bed as attackers closed in, and vows to grow stronger as quickly as possible. Setting his limits, he explains he agreed to look after her out of gratitude, but that doesn't give her the right to meddle with his work, and she can leave whenever she wants. For a moment, Jiangxia watches him in silence, simply staring. Saying she was only worried about his safety, she wishes him a good trip. Frustrated, Howard declares that talking to an NPC is pointless and prepares to leave with Robot 2003, which keeps repeating its cleaning directive. Alone, Jiangxia realizes she was wrong about him. He isn't a mediocre man and wonders what's going on in his mind. She questions her sanity, yet she fails to notice the giant snake inching up behind her. Turning, she spots the massive creature. The voices call her to join them, echoing as skeletal hands encircle her in the dark. A shadowy figure watches her tie her hair, keeping an eye on the scene. Back in the real world, she takes a deep breath and steadies herself atop the fortress. She settles on a plan to forge a friendly relationship with Howard, She won't make it to the sanctuary alone. Observing his conduct, the robot notes that Howard's tone has changed, and he answers that if he'd been tougher before, he wouldn't have let them threaten him. He was explaining his mistake. After the previous dream, Howard said he believed everyone was good. In one memory, a woman. She learns that the person she had been searching for had already left the night before. Reflecting on the past, the woman says that Josh Tai fought to save her life and urges them to persuade him to abandon the dangerous groups now that he's out of prison. Determining his position, Howard declares that whether in dreams or reality, he should stop fantasizing about human nature or salvation. In another recollection, the hooded man ridicules him for not fighting back, asking if he thinks he's a god. He questions Howard's worth, asking whether he's rich or powerful and what he could offer to get him to work for him. Howard replies that saving lives is a hero's job, something he can do on his own, and that most people are barely decent. The machine repeats its limitation, saying it can't understand human language. New obstacles appear when they run into two gigantic, multi-headed wolves blocking their path. The robot calls them ferocious mutant wolves, but Howard says they're exactly what he wanted, and that it's time to get to work. Warning him of the risk, the machine says the wolf's combat score exceeds his. Preparing for battle, Howard grips a dart. Together with his former deer-headed self, they forge a partnership. Side by side, the new deer-headed form charges into combat. A massive beast lunges fiercely, and Howard meets the attack without hesitation, striking a wolf. While battling a pack of mutant wolves, Howard Chen lunges at one and brings another down. He wrestles the wolves into a jaw-shut stance, bracing himself to deflect a direct strike from yet another beast. With a final, decisive move, he clamps the creature's head in place, pins it down, and ultimately neutralizes it. Though his hand is injured in the process, he calls out for Robot 2003. Sitting on the ground, he listens as the robot explains that the fluid from the pustules is caustic and that hand-to-hand combat is part of his training. In the distance, a tent appears, and Robot 2003 questions why a shelter tent would be out here. When Howard lifts the flap, he discovers a box that the robot also identifies as belonging to the shelter. Inside, a container marked with a symbol catches his eye, prompting him to ask its meaning. Robot 2003 replies that it holds wheat seeds, pointing to the wheat shelter symbol, but Howard comments on the name. Sounds more like a farm. The robot explains that other shelters used to swap materials before they were obliterated, making the tale oddly familiar to Howard. He remembers encountering a range of monsters. As boars and insects wander the area, tying the clues together. Seeing the ruined camp with monsters guard a box, turning the scene into an expedition-style quest. Howard notices the pattern. He sees his situation as a classic survival game, where players must craft items and explore. He asks Robot 2003 whether the environment is suitable for agriculture, and the reply is simply soil. It can be made from rocks. The robot also says it can use animal waste and monster ashes to create. They suggest using the giant bird from the shelter as fertilizer to kick off planting. That night, Howard tries to get a head start. Robot 2003 says it would love to farm, but points out that the corrosive ocean will damage the plants. Reassuring the robot, Howard says their work will be helpful when the humans return, leaving the robot surprised. Elsewhere, AI-63 reveals that the game's the main challenge is measuring how much humanity's future can improve with the player's help. In the desert, Robot 2003 notes that humans will be taken into account during the final evaluation. Howard decides to get ready for his 180-day stay. The robot agrees, saying that if the shelter returns to how it once was, the humans will return. Remembering the past, it describes the shelter as a peaceful place, something humans would not simply abandon. Fixing his gaze on his companion, Howard quietly asks whether this place was ever a home. Together they stare out over the desert, echoing the word home. At dusk, Howard charges at a giant spider and strikes it, then falls to the ground. He snatches a rock and keeps striking the creature until the screen blinks 70. A notification alerts him his combat score has dropped, and the robot explains it's calculated from the monster's strength and the fight status. Displaying the new figure, Robot 2003 notes that Howard once reached 90 points in his prime, but now sits at 70. Carrying a sack, Howard asks what this means, since he's never lost a battle. The robot says his will to fight is fading, that he's merely using his body to vent anger. When Howard asks for privacy, he reflects on how dream training can prepare him for real enemies and pressures. He concludes that in desperate times people act as if they're saving themselves, even if it may not work. When Robot 2003 pushes him to return to the other world, Howard declares that a place without his family can't be called home. Looking ahead, he tells the robot that restoring the shelter will keep hope alive for the people who once lived here. When they return to the base, Jiangxi congratulates him on the good harvest and asks where the giant bird's body is. She explains that the monster flesh contains too many chemicals, so she cleaned it to avoid attracting other creatures. Deciding on the next step, Howard says he will hunt some monsters the next day to use as fertilizer. As he tries to bite a piece of food, he can't chew and wonders if his muscles have been weakened by erosion. Watching from behind, Jiangxi notices him, suggesting that soaking the food might make it edible. She averts her gaze and stares at the seed containers he had collected. Seeing only one potion remains, Howard asks if they can find more elsewhere. Proposes searching for a safer refuge, enlisting Jiangxi's support, who agrees that he must prepare for a supply run. Later, his name reverberates in her voice, and she stares at a bowl of noodles. She explained that she'd cooked with the grains he had brought back, since he seemed to be having trouble chewing. Jiangxi urges him to eat before it cools. Turning toward her, Howard asks if she used all the seeds he found. Calmly, Jiangxi explained she hadn't used them all. She'd ground some down instead. He sealed them into a powder. Sitting in quiet beside Robot 2003, Howard steers clear of stretching the conversation. When asked whether he really intended to plant the seeds, Jiangxi says the environment. It isn't suitable, and the land will soon be flooded. He noted he hadn't expected her to waste it. The seeds sprouted so quickly that Howard, accustomed to handling problems, advised her not to let them spread. He tells her to decide on her own next time and to eat the noodles without the robot seeing. She remains motionless, staring at him with a serious look, and keeps watching. When Howard comforts Robot 2003, the moment shifts. On the third day, he fills 3 vials of potion for. On the trip, he notes that the potions will be enough for an emergency, and the robot reminds him. His safety is paramount. As he's about to leave, Jiangxi beckons him over to talk. He turns and she asks what she wants to say, and Jiangxi says the records contain instructions on robots. They could try upgrading Robot 2003 since she knows electronics. Suddenly, Howard wonders if an upgrade would actually work. With her eyes shut, she says that no matter what, they must stop suffering further losses. She continues by noting the robot is old, and if it fails, she can at least retrieve the data before the chip breaks. While insisting that 2003 has always been loyal, Howard hears Jiangxi reply, "It's just a machine, and I'm trying to make the most of it." Firmly, she asks if he really sees it as a friend. He snaps that he hates her sarcastic tone, then questions whether showing sympathy makes him less of a man. Mentioning that he's even considered biffering a tiger, he hears Jiangxi say that a real machine focuses only on the result. He walks away, saying their opinions clash and they should talk less to avoid arguments. Watching him depart, Jiangxi worries his downfall is imminent and calls his lack of focus on survival irrational. Gripped by unseen hands, she notices the episodes are occurring more often. On the other side, Howard and Robot 2003 spot raptors and wonder why they haven't attacked yet. They explain the birds are scavengers and will stay away if left alone. After checking the nests, the robot persuades him that the roof must be cleared, and he tells Howard that the ocean of erosion spread because humans used to fight a lot. Robot 2003 urges him and Jiangxi to stop fighting, asking what people truly contend over, and Howard realizes that a deeper story lies behind this dream. The robot explains that people with different powers negotiated and argued, yet did nothing as the erosion spread, exposing their failure. Summing up the root cause of the disputes, he notes that an overemphasis on differences pushes some to impose their opinions and label others. He says he won't hold a grudge against a virtual NPC, noting he can tell when it's simply a game. As they edge into a vast patch of wind-ruffled undergrowth, he trails beside the robot. Robot 2003 hurries him on, reminding him that the day's goal is to explore the abandoned camps, but Howard hesitates. Spotting a truck with a huge creature perched on top, he notes that there seems to be something intriguing inside and questions whether he's really serious about approaching it. In that moment, the robot expresses worry, warning that it's a ruler-class beast, one of the region's most formidable. The robot warned the predators that heavy equipment would be required to defeat it, but he declined to help. Fight it alone, Howard says, and play like seasoned gamers, starting by staying put. He was shown the area and how to save progress. Noting there's no F5 key, the robot reassures him. He tells him it's with him, then lights a fire to get the creature's attention, and Howard watches as it turns. Toward the flames, the creature roared loudly, distracting him long enough to seize the chance to start driving. The truck was taken away. Opening its back door, he sees they've set up a makeshift shelter. A battered truck sits abandoned in the desert, its back door wide open. Inside, Howard. Chen checks the supplies and spots honey, a musical instrument, a toolbox, and ingredients that could be turned into explosives. He also finds a crystal in a container and realizes it's the most valuable item. Noticing a symbol on a device, he figures the eggs can be thawed and hatched, so he decides to grab the critical items. Because the crystal's case is too heavy, he opens it to snag only the gem, hoping Robot 2003 will tire out. But as his fingers brush it, the stone reacts to the sand on his skin. The crystal suddenly yanks him backward, hurling him out of the truck, and Howard slams to the ground. The entire truck is hurled violently into the air. The robot warns him to be careful, and just as the giant creature hears the commotion, it snatches a cloth. Howard scrambles away from the monster, darting into a crevice to stay out of reach of the creature's tongue. Plummeting from the sky, the truck crashes into the mountain. The impact triggers a massive explosion at the point of collision, and a rock slide begins to sweep down the slope. Amid the flow of debris, Howard slides down the hill as the creature stumbles. The monster struggles to climb the cliff face to escape, while the young man continues to fall, clinging to a crack in the rock. He says he would have been defeated had he slipped into the erosion sea. With a determined look, he steadies himself again, watching the creature that is also clinging to the slope. He wonders what will happen. Seeing the sacs on the monster's body begin to swell, he readies himself. Then the creature hurls a jet of substance from the sacs on its shoulders. As Robot 2003 yells for Howard to hold on, a cloud rushes toward him, and he shields himself with an object. He braves the blast and the falling debris. Howard injects the vial's contents into his leg. A thick plume of smoke rises from the cliff, and the creature watches the outcome. Afterward, the creature turned and walked away. On the fourth day, Robot 2003 kept vigil over a campfire inside a cave. The young man finally rose, and the small robot announced that he was awake. The robot praised Howard for surviving the collapse, noting it had never seen a human with such willpower. Howard downplays the ordeal, claiming he's seasoned in risky situations, yet admits that being struck by the substance was the worst experience he's ever had. When the red gem's explosion is brought up, Robot 2003 listens as the young man explains what must have happened. It has proved to be an invaluable energy core, and it's worth noting that rubbing it with sand actually releases its power. The robot says a strong impact would make it explode, just like the core in their shelter. Howard asks whether he missed a dust-proof device nearby, and the robot tries to understand the mistake. He asks the robot what more he needs to know to avoid another explosion. The young man listens as the machine warns him of a looming danger. Realizing that his human companion had been marked by the giant creature's substance, the robot says he has to brace for unforeseen attacks. Howard glances at the mark on his back. He realized it was a signal, and that area of his skin looked burnt. Noticing his left hand numbed, he reached for his chest with only his right. Sitting by the fire, he recalls the egg box and asks the robot whether it still exists. Robot 2003 reports the eggs are safe and still incubating at the ideal temperature. Then the small machine opens its compartment and drops the eggs onto the cave floor. Howard wonders if the shelter also produces eggs, and the robot replies that they keep chickens, ducks, and other animals. Thinking of the mountains, the machine remembers the shepherds. Tending to the sheep. Holding an egg, he says he hasn't forgotten those moments either, missing the rooster's crow from his old village. Still, he remembers that as he grew up. The road home turned frightening, forcing him to forget what had occurred. Robot 2003 finds it odd that fear and longing surface together, and questions this because Howard had called home a paradise. Howard nods in agreement, admitting he too wants to go home to find his father. He wants to tell his dad to stop working now that he's rich and has paid off the family's debts. Yet, staring at the egg, he laments that he can't say it. He also wished to tell his mom not to blame herself for the debts, now that he has a boyfriend and a family. And in fact, he realizes he can't say any of that to them. Howard explains that his parents blame themselves for the debt, and a word of comfort would only deepen that guilt. His genuine fear was that his parents would walk into the emergency room and see him in critical condition. He confesses that he has always seen that incident as a sharp blade for both himself and his parents. They both sit in silence before the campfire in a cave. Robot 2003 calls him by name and asks if he'd like a hug. The children at the shelter used to do that whenever they were sad. But Howard insists he's no longer a child, and as an adult, he can handle their stress. He leans on his robotic companion and remarks that in this dream game, his biggest advantage is the absence of any humans. Howard goes on to say that being caught venting is a social embarrassment, and many who hide their complaints actually crave a hug. He asks whether the eggs can hatch in the incubator, and the robot replies yes, but then tells them that. Add sand so they won't break. While he places an egg in the sand, he mentions that he found it. It's funny that as a child he dreamed of becoming a scientist and owning his own microscope. Howard says he wouldn't dare do it in real life, but he wants to see the rooster crow before the world ends. Spotting a scratch on the robot's head, he asks about the iron he had put in their fields. On the cave floor, a few feathers and shards of metal are scattered. Robot 2003 explains that while it slept, iron scavengers attacked, but it frightened them off with fire, damaging them as they rushed in. Howard thanks it for the tale, acknowledging that his companion fought a fierce battle. Yet Robot 2003 still can't believe what happened. When its deepest wish to see humans again came true, it found hope, yet remembered that people always lie, promising to return and never keeping it. In the end, it was a human who saved it. Howard remains silent, looking back. When he turns to the robot, he admits he doesn't know what to say to an NPC. The machine suggests that, for now, he can treat it like family. Like in the last shelter, a startled Robot 2003 repeats, family, and insists it has never had a relative. Howard rests a hand on its head as they head toward the path. Marking the trail to the monster's lair, a massive furry beast looms in the canyon's center. The robot notes that this hulking figure, another of the ruling class monsters, was likely drawn by yesterday's explosion. Howard wonders how the giant lizard will react to its domain being invaded, and the machine predicts a fierce battle will ensue. While the monster is engaged, they realize they can safely snatch the energy core. Howard hears his companion compare its power to a nuclear bomb. Startled, he quickly sees the situation as a chance to solve two problems at once. Birds glide over a wall where a figure lies on the ground. One lands near a gap in the wall. Howard peeks from behind it. Outside the shelter, a bonfire crackles. Suddenly, a spear shoots out and she slips into the wall beside him. The weapon detonates, and Robot 2003 calls out his name. JAC echoes from the same corner. She steps into the area with her bow, asking if he's okay. Inside the shelter, she explains that she had been preparing for the past 2 days while he was gone. Howard complains she nearly hit him, and he asks if she was the one who handled the birds. In their nest, they waited for an answer. JAC explains the eagles kept attacking. The weapon was. While working, she discovered other uses for the power core in the manual and used the facility to cut pieces. At its core, she turned everything into weapons. Even though she's archery trained, she somewhat admits. She still feels nervous handling the weapon, yet Howard praises her, calling her amazing and saying she must have. He possesses an exceptionally high IQ. Afterward, he asks her to hand him some seeds from the power core because he needs to depart. Soon again, JAC pulls his arm and urges him to stay a few more days, revealing she found. She offers a hint about a place called Under the Moon, saying that humans probably fled there. But Howard tells her they won't reach it, because a gigantic lizard is hot on his heels and could destroy the shelter at any moment, he says, holding an energy seed as he directs JAC. Use everything she has and wait. He'll take care of the lizard himself. Standing beside them, Robot 2003 appears and declares it must recharge, then transfers the eggs to the incubator in the basement. Howard then asks JAC to care for the eggs he collected on his hunt, since the shelter has an incubator. She agrees to guard the eggs, saying she loves small animals and that he can trust everything to her. He asks her whether anything odd has happened over the past 2 days, remarking that she seems different. JAC assures him that she's only changed a little, so there's no need to worry, and he falls silent. Outside, Howard inspects the explosive spear, but wonders whether 4 energy cores will be enough. He asks Robot 2003 if any lizards have been detected, and hears that no monsters are nearby. The small robot explains that its radar is used to locate lost animals, but its range is very limited. Suddenly, the structure shudders and fragments of the ceiling tumble around Howard and the robot. He wonders if it's a lizard, but Robot 2003 insists the radar can't pick up any monsters. JAC appears and tells them not to panic, revealing that the problem is a leak in the power room. Robot 2003 assures them the outage is temporary and will be fixed promptly, but it remains worried about the eggs. Howard warns that the incubator's eggs might spoil if the temperature isn't corrected in time. Seeing the entrance blocked by a large rocket, he decides to move it so he can pass. Inside the incubator, the eggs' indicator lights begin to flicker. JAC arrives, confirms the power system is fixed, and immediately asks about the eggs. Howard tells her that only one will hatch, since the others didn't make it. Robot 2003 peers into the incubator, where only one egg has survived. Howard stays silent for a moment before asking the robot to put the remaining egg into its own incubator, and then they leave. JAC shows displeasure. Confronting him, she reminds him that machines have no emotions, calls his talk of life with them odd, and demands the egg back. But Howard declines, saying she's been acting strange while the robot urges them not to fight. Robot 2003's radar detects a creature outside that lets out a roar. On the screen, a lizard suddenly pops up. It hears Howard tell it to stay and guard the egg, but the robot refuses, claiming Howard is its family, leaving the young man speechless. He nods in agreement, but tells it to stay out of the fight as he dashes outside, the machine hot on his heels. JACC watches the scene, questions their notion of family, and thinks it's all crazy. Then a massive tail unfurls and a voice asks, "Where do you think you're going?" Exiting the shelter, Howard hurries forward, not looking back. After a thunderous halt, the giant creature relentlessly pursues him. Robot 2003 warns that they must lure the monster into the mountains to protect the shelter. While scaling the canyon wall, the giant lizard scrambles up after them. He realizes the monster won't come down since the cramped spot is too tight for a fight, so he decides it's time to use the explosive he's carrying. He throws the object. He throws it at the canyon wall. It blows up far from the target, but Howard tells the robot it was deliberate. Countly explains that the distraction was a ploy to buy time for the other monster's move and asks how far away it is. Robot 2003 reports that its speed has increased. With a loud roar, the lizard sees the other moving fast, ready to strike at any moment. His robotic companion warns that the battlefield is near and asks what their plan is. While continuing their sprint, Howard announces that they're about to make some noise. As they cross the field, a massive blast erupts. From the cliff's summit, the lizard watches the distant smoke and surveys everything. Warning of looming danger, Robot 2003 mentions a corrosive sea and that the lizard is nearby. Howard vows to buy time, telling his companion to turn right. Pushing forward through the tight canyon, they're squeezed by the narrow walls. The robot keeps pace beside him at high speed. Suddenly, a gorilla monster blocks the path, and Howard greets it. Saying it still blocks his way, a giant lizard emerges from behind and seals the route. Robot 2003 warns that they're trapped between the two, analyzing the mountain to the right. Howard spots the weathered rocks, their surfaces worn by time. Gripping his spear, he orders the robot to trail behind him. The monsters roar together as they face off, and he rushes between them with his spear, shouting. So they could escape. Tossing an explosive behind him, he launches it as the monsters close in. Inside the tight canyon, dust swirling, a gorilla-like creature lunges at the lizard. Howard and the robot duck into a wall hole, but he realizes the cramped spot won't keep them safe for long. Outside, the battle between the two monsters raged on. The lizard braced itself on the ground and stared down its opponent. The gorilla hurled sand at the lizard before striking a blow to its heart. From his hiding spot, Howard watched the fight and concluded that the gorilla seemed superior. Launching a direct attack, the lizard slammed into the gorilla's chest, forcing it to roar. Cowering to its knees, the creature releases a substance onto the ground. Lying on its fallen foe, the lizard stalks forward in a predatory pose. Spotting a brief opening, Howard lunges at it with his spear, but the attack is blocked. With the tip of the weapon cracked, he hurls it toward the creature's open mouth, only to realize the strike wasn't strong enough. He perceives the weapon differently, his eyes widening. Focusing, he readies a fresh assault. Howard fires a projectile and watches it collide midair. The weapon strikes the lizard's head, piercing its mouth. An internal blast neutralizes the creature, which then falls to the ground. Shrapnel from the blast races past him, and Robot 2003 cheers him on for the win. He laments the outcome, saying that even with his skill, the fight only yielded sweat. Suddenly, Robot 2003 calls out to him, asking what's going on. Inside the incubator, the egg begins to tremble and crack. The little machine then announces that the egg is about to hatch. A storm is forming in the sky, swelling as lightning tears through the clouds. Howard turns to Robot 2003, puzzled by the odd conditions. The machine identifies the storm as the yearly farmer typhoon, foretelling acid rain and sandstorms for the next 48 hours. Warned that the disaster will strike in 10 minutes, Howard burns his last grenade to blast a cave for shelter. Howard asks his companion if he hears the familiar beeping, but the robot says the wind is too loud. Meanwhile, the egg finally cracks, and Robot 2003 cheers that his dream of rebuilding the shelters is about to come true. Yet the beeping around Howard grows louder, and he's convinced he's heard it before. Howard understands the sound as a danger signal. He identifies the noise, linking it to the countdown timers, just like in shooter games. As he turns, Howard realizes the beeping is coming from a fallen creature. Its sacs pulse intermittently, vibrating continuously. Swelling aggressively, they launch a projectile, forcing Howard to dodge as Robot 2003 is hurled. Then the sacs erupt violently, defeating the creature and hurling Howard into a pool of liquid. The substance sears his skin as birds begin to land on the canyon floor. He wields the item, and a swarm of birds swirls around him, staggering him into a fall. Pieces of his gear scatter around an energy flask as he darts off as fast as he can while. Birds attack him from behind. With a forceful kick to the energy flask, he makes a desperate attempt to. The flask slams into the rock wall, shattering on impact. It blows up, sending the gem tearing a hole into the mountainside. The blast carves a new passage, revealing a cave entrance that could be a chance of survival. He rushes toward the shelter, needing just one more second. Yet claws close in from behind, and his wounded body crumples to the ground. As he struggles to move, the birds attack him, and he sees that his mistake has only made things worse. Bird lunges at Howard, but Robot 2003 pulls him back and urges him to hang on. The tiny machine fires a projectile in reply, and Howard yells for it to back off as he's dragged. Driving his companion toward the cave, the robot blocks the entrance. Lying on the ground, Howard tells the robot to forget it, saying he can't go on. Insisting he will survive, Robot 2003 assures him it will take care of him. The small machine moves deeper into the cave. When Howard reaches his wounded companion, he tells the robot to leave, glad it survived with the chick. The machine refuses, insisting that Howard is its family. Howard urges it to abandon its programming, saying the journey is over and any attempt to prolong it will only cause suffering. He reminds it that birds don't care about metal and it's time to face reality. Suddenly, a bird swoops in at the cave entrance, attacking the robot. With its attack locked, the robot declares it can provide safety. Even as it's hit repeatedly, it vows to stay loyal. Observed in silence by Howard, the robot radiates warmth. Though it endures constant blows, Robot 2003 still offers light and the cure for everything. In a flashback, Howard repairs the robot while remarking that home is a paradise of safety, loyalty, light, and healing. Injured, he begs the robot to stop. With one strike, the giant bird crushes the small robot's head. As Howard watches, the bird's beak lights up. The strike severs Robot 2003's chest, sending smoke and a slick of fluid into the air. A metallic hiss rises from its head. Moments later, the robot says humans can lie, but it cannot. Howard begs it to stop. Promising a haven cleaner than paradise, it asks its companion not to leave. In a vision of the shelter, the robot's voice declares that everything has been cleaned to perfection. Asks if anyone wants to take a look or if anyone is around. Back to the present, the birds attack they. Surrounded by smoke and flames, the small robot endures pain while Howard pleads for it to cease. Shaking under each impact, the machine responds to a voice that says no. By the sixth day, the sun hangs. Across the barren landscape, a body lies motionless, sprawled amid the dust. Lying on his back, Howard wonders if the world is over. His arm is bound to the damaged equipment still. Robot 2003 reports that the sandstorm has pushed the scavengers away, and its radar is still functioning. She tries to lead them home. While he's being pulled along, he asks whether he's paralyzed, yet the machine comforts him. He said it was a side effect of the injections, promising to fix it as soon as he could move again. Howard stays calm, but suddenly the robot's wheel jams and its frame starts to collapse. It is dragged, and soon afterward the small machine's body is destroyed in an explosion. His parts scatter across the ground, mingling with the dust, urging Howard to explain how he will remodel the shelter. Taking a deep breath, Howard closes his eyes for a moment. Once he's settled, he asks the machine to listen closely. He describes a muddy, cement-lined path that will lead to the shelter. As his vision unfolds, he keeps speaking. Planning to plant tall, straight, popular trees along the road, he envisions an open field to the left for growing wheat, soybeans, and corn. According to his plan, he will plant rapeseed flowers on the right side of the road, which will bloom in the spring. Along the dirt road, a light gleams on the horizon. He says he'll plant a large tree there so he can see it every time he leaves. He remembers feeling lost and confused, recalling moments like being rejected from a job because he lacked experience or a solid degree. Thinking back to the time he had nowhere to go, he imagines sprinting through the rain to chase a bus that had already departed. A taxi driver tells him it was the last one and offers to give him a ride. He politely declines, choosing to keep walking while clutching a coin. When he stops in the rain at that moment, he simply turns back. Imagining the tree, he feels it will always be there for him, just as it was when he began his journey. In the flames, the robot says it's a lovely tree, assuring that it will keep humans from ever getting lost. He agrees, confessing he's been lost for a long time. A warning flags a barrier before the shelter, yet Robot 2003 keeps operating. Arriving unsoiled, it promises to depart just as spotless. Continuing, the small machine says it will stay there so long, as it keeps the place cleaner than paradise. It interrupts itself, stopping to read a sign that warns of danger and indicates a detour. Screaming at Robot 2003, "Don't go there," Howard watches as its wheel strikes something on the ground. From amid the flames, the small machine calls his name. Moments later it explodes, a shockwave hurls him back. He falls face down, coughing hard. Robot debris drifts down, and a piece with its serial number lands in the dust. Lying beside the fragments, he wonders why the world has to be so cruel to him. A hand stretches across the ground to grab a circular object, but a quicker hand snatches it instead. She grabs the object first. With it in hand, Janxi rushes ahead while Howard watches from the ground. He whispers Sharon Yang, hoping to reach her. As she darts away, he shouts her name. Again, on the 8th day, Howard's hand leans against a sheet. Suddenly he sits up and climbs out of bed. Howard walks to the sink, takes a glass of water, and a memory flashes through his mind. Janxier, sprinting with the object, unsettles him. He slams the door open and shouts Sharon Yang's name. Rushing down the hallway, he demands to know where she is. He storms forward, insisting on the reasons for her deception. In another room, Janxi readies a tool. Finally, Howard appears, having found her. Before her, he watches as the Robot 2003's system launches a reboot. Its memory stabilizes, the machine seems restored, and then it calls his name, announcing its return. Wondering how it could be, Howard watches Janxi's disbelief as she says she thought the robot had been destroyed. She points to the metal ring, the central controller, and explains the unit can be fixed if it's still intact. Robot 2003 cheerfully declares it now has hands, is spotless, and boasts brand new parts. The machine proudly announces a cooking system embedded in its head and demonstrates its upgrades, revealing a fighting system with an activated heat conductor in its arms. Ecstatic about its culinary and combat enhancements, the robot asks if it's become an elite model, then analyzes the whole. Howard marvels at how quickly the job was finished. Janxi reminds him she'd said the robot could be upgraded, then berates him for using scrap metal instead of the frames in the maintenance room. She accuses him of not wanting to learn and claims he vents his frustration on her. Howard defends himself by saying she had warned that the robot could be damaged in the process. She counters that scientific tests don't guarantee success, calling him reckless and noting that if she hadn't fixed the robot, the situation would have turned dangerous for her. He denies the accusation and tries to respond, but Janxi says they'll have to talk later because she's too tired. She defends her actions, noting that he'd been gone for days and she needed to protect herself. She asks how he managed to set off the traps if he had left a note. Howard accuses Janxi of getting sentimental when they discuss science and complains she leaves him alone whenever he tries to plan. Screaming that he always finds excuses to blame her, she says she doesn't know what she did wrong. Crying, Janxi confesses she just wants to survive and has no ill intentions. Howard. He apologizes, admitting he hadn't considered it. Turning to leave, she walks away while he asks. She tells him not to worry, while Janxi explains that a simple charge won't satisfy the robot's needs. Only the power core will work, but he has to get it himself. Confused, Howard realizes he needs to. He needs to change his attitude. He can't seem to handle an NPC who excels at arguing. As she walks away, she pulls her hair back, remarking that he's stubborn and can't take it when others are tough on him. Choosing to play his game, Janxi vows to pull back at just the right moment. Seeing the situation as a stalemate, Howard tells Robot 2003 that with his family back, he has. He regains his confidence. The machine asks whether he can still fight after being damaged by a corrosive agent. Substance, Howard says he can move normally, but his hands just won't stop shaking, which stops him from hurling projectiles. The robot orders him to stay still, saying it will battle on his behalf with its combat chip abilities, earning a 300-point score. Questioning when it comes to the score's reliability, Howard notes his is only 90. The machine explains that a standard fighting robot chip, inherited from 400 years ago, offers to show him what it can do. The robot lists skills, boxing, judo, karate, and various other martial arts, and declares that humans still score higher in fighting. Shocked by the claim, Howard struggles to comprehend the absurd difference.